Chapter 581. Xiao Xian was brought across the river by Cha-Cha. Although many houses on the mountain had collapsed, the cave that Xiao Xian lived in when he first came to this world was still there. From the outside, it still looked the same as before. When Xiao Xian went in, there were some bird droppings and traces of wild beasts. They probably came in after the tribe left, but when the world changed, they were scared away. Later, with Cha-Cha here, they didn't dare to come back. Without looking much, Xiao Xian and the other warriors who crossed the river first went to cut down trees nearby. Many of the trees on the surrounding mountains had fallen, but many more were still standing. Now they didn't have time to go further into the forest to cut down the thick ancient trees, so they could only use the trees on the nearby hills to deal with the emergency. It didn't take much time to make rafts, so Xiao Xian and the others quickly made some rafts. Xiao Xian calculated the width of the river. Although the river was still slowly rising, the distance between the two sides was only about 200 meters. At first, it sounded very far, but in reality, it wasn't. More than 20 long rafts were tied together to form a floating bridge on the water. They couldn't carry heavy objects, but they could definitely walk. They let the people waiting on the other side of the river line up and crossed the river on the pontoon bridge. As for the few fearsome beasts, except for the alligator snapping turtle, the others were brought across by Cha-Cha in batches. Now that Cha-Cha was much bigger than them, he could hold them. The 7 green-faced fanged beasts were brought across the river in cages. They were very repulsed by Cha-Cha, and there was hostility between fearsome beasts. Fortunately, Xiao Xian, the one who enslaved them, suppressed them. Otherwise, they would have rushed out of the cages as soon as they were brought across the river. Simple wooden cages were simply unable to contain these 7 ferocious beasts. Watching the last group of Yanjiao players walk across the pontoon bridge, Xiao Xian turned to look at the wanderers. These wanderers had been following the Yanjiao team since they left the fearsome beast forest. They had not fallen behind. They had placed all their bets on the Yanjiao team. If they won, they would live. If they lost, they would die. Along the way, they had hesitated and felt lost. Some of them had left, and some of them had not been able to avoid the natural disaster. But in the end, nearly 300 people had survived and followed them. Xiao Xian had also discussed with the chief and the shaman on the way. The tribe did not reject the 300 wanderers. Moreover, now was the time of reconstruction, and they needed people. Although the wanderers did not have much strength, they still had some skills. Without skills, the wanderers would not have survived until now. Let's go. Xiao Xian looked at the hundreds of expectant eyes and tilted his head towards the pontoon bridge. The hundreds of anxious eyes suddenly lit up. Several people came over and excitedly thanked Xiao Xian. Then they called their relatives and friends to cross the pontoon bridge. Some crocodiles swam slowly on both sides of the pontoon bridge. Their cold eyes stared at the people on the pontoon bridge. Stepping on the pontoon bridge, some wanderers were still very nervous. But looking at the mountain in front of them, they calmed down a lot. As long as they crossed the bridge, they could start a new life. Although the Yanjiao people seemed to have a bad temper, at least they could tolerate them. They had just heard a few Yanjiao people talking about how much farmland they could cultivate and how many cows and horses they could raise. They could participate in all these. If they could exchange labor for food, they would not starve to death. Everything would be fine. The wanderers walking in front of them walked steadily and quickly. After the last wanderer had passed, Xiao Xian thanked Fu Shi and the others. Thank you so much for today. When you have time, come and play on the other side. Fu Shi laughed out loud. He raised his hand and patted Xiao Xian's shoulder. Okay. The other drumming tribe people were also in a good mood. It seemed pretty good to be neighbors with the Yanjiao people. Before, a Yanjiao warrior had told them that in the future, he would use animal meat and animal skin to exchange for water moonstones. If they could trade with the Yanjiao people, they would not have to look for the Pu tribe people anymore. Moreover, the Yinjiao people's clothes and things were much better than theirs. Many of them were things they had never seen before. A drumming tribe warrior looked enviously at the other side of the river. In the future, I will save more water moonstones and exchange them with the Yinjiao people. They are more honest than the Pu tribe people. The others nodded in agreement. In fact, they had always known that the Pu tribe people were more treacherous, but they did not want to leave this place. They also had a lot of water moonstones in their hands. They did not want to be too troublesome, so they turned a blind eye. But now, they changed their target. If there was a way, who would not want to live a better life? What about this pontoon bridge? Fu Shi asked Xiao Xian. Let's leave it here for now. Xiao Xian said. Okay, I'll tie it up again. Fu Shi went over and hammered down the already loose wooden stake, and tied it to the pontoon bridge again. After Xiao Xian said goodbye, he crossed the pontoon bridge. It was already late, and there was no time to build a new house. They could only make do for now. Fortunately, the weather was good these 2 days, and it was not cold at night. After experiencing this difficult journey, staying here for one night was actually very easy for many people. They were too lazy to move if there was a cave. Some children had already wrapped themselves in animal skins and slept directly on the ground. They had an impression of this place. It was like returning to the cradle, and they slept very deeply. The shaman called Xiao Xian over to discuss the settlement of the wanderers. In the end, they decided to give them a nearby hill to live in. There were no plants on the hill, but there were many holes, like small houses. The warriors who went there to train in the past dug out stones. In the past, when the warriors were tired from training, they would rest there. Just right, now the wanderers lived there. Now the wanderers were exhausted and did not have the strength to build houses. The Yinjiao people were not much better. The warriors still had to assign tasks to clean up dangerous beasts. Everything could only depend on themselves. Having a cave to live in was already very good. After walking around, Xiao Xian went back to rest. The house he and old Ku used to live in had already collapsed. Caesar was lying there. Old Ku was wrapped in animal skins and directly leaned on Caesar to sleep. Cha-Cha had flown away. Xiao Xian spread out a piece of animal skin and closed his eyes. It was rare for him to have a good night's sleep. The next day, after Xiao Xian woke up, he did not have time to eat breakfast. He ran to the river bank to look at the pontoon bridge above. The pontoon bridge sank a little. Xiao Xian went over and turned over the rafts near the shore. He saw some strange insects with long tentacles attached to them. The pontoon bridge sank because of them. They were dying, and their bodies were not as flexible as before. They could not stretch as freely as before. When the river disappeared, the living environment in the water might have changed. It was no longer conducive to their survival. Those that could leave had already left with the receding water. Those that could not leave could only wait for death. Perhaps, in the near future, there would be no insects that could eat wood in this river. Many river beasts that Xiao Xian and the others had seen in the river had also disappeared. Perhaps they had left with the river beasts. Perhaps they continued to live in a remote mountain forest in the upper reaches of the river. However, that was not what Xiao Xian needed to worry about. The changes that were unfavorable to the river beasts were good news for people. The Yinjiao team returned to this place again and started a new life. What was different from before was that they were no longer isolated from the world. When they wanted to go on a trade trip, if they wanted to use the animal skins they hunted to exchange for more things, if they wanted to communicate with more people, all they had to do was to walk across the pontoon bridge. Chapter 582. Early in the morning, the entire tribe was filled with the sounds of people yelling and banging. It was very lively. The place that had been quiet for 4 years was bustling again. Pieces of stone and thick wood were being transported to the mountain where the tribe was located. The people in charge of making pottery were also busy. Everything was good here except for the soil. It was not suitable for pottery. However, those who had experience in pottery were able to distinguish where the soil was most suitable for pottery. After being escorted out by the patrolling guards, they found 3 spots. If one didn't have good eyesight, they wouldn't be able to distinguish the difference in soil quality. At least, they hadn't found it when they were here before. They didn't know if it was because of the earthquake not long ago. Although the 3 spots were a little far from the mountain where the tribe was located, the Yanjiao people had plenty of strength. Moving things was a piece of cake. After the soil was transported back, some people, led by Xing, found that the soil was more suitable for making bricks. The bricks they made were very good for building houses. Back then, Xing treated a simple pottery left behind by his ancestors as a treasure. Even now, that pottery was still kept by him. After he went to the old haunt, he came into contact with pottery and mastered the technique of making pottery. He had been addicted to it. Now, he was in charge of all pottery matters in the tribe. After the fire seed merged, Xing and some of the elders in the tribe were much healthier. It was as if they were younger by half. Xiao Xian could still hear Xing's proud laughter when he was building the house. Xing said that he would start making bricks and pottery immediately. However, they couldn't wait forever. There were so many people in the tribe. Who knew when they would have bricks? Therefore, most of the houses were made of wood and stone. It wouldn't be too late to change them after the bricks and tiles were made. The people in charge of farming had already started looking for suitable land. When the Yanjiao people left, they had dug a man-made lake. Now, the lake was still there, but the path connecting it to the river was broken. After all, the river was no longer there. The river bank had also changed a lot. There was a long bulge along the bank, like a giant python lying on the bank. In the future, the tribe would dig the path connecting the river and the lake again. The crops that couldn't withstand the drought would be planted around the lake. The ones that could withstand the drought and were suitable for the mountain environment would be planted in some places on the mountain. Duo Kong had already brought people to dig for stones. The core seed wrapped in white worm skin was also placed in a place. Now, they had to choose a stone to throw over. The nearby area had already been cleaned up by the warriors. They cleaned up all the threatening beasts and plants. Those that could be eaten were dragged back to cook, and those that could not be eaten were burned. The outer walls that had been destroyed needed to be rebuilt. Ta and Gigu, the 2 team leaders, took those who were itching to hunt. The tribe did not have enough food now. Rebuilding the tribe was physical work, which consumed a lot of energy. They needed to hunt to survive. Zheng Luo and the rest were not familiar with this place, so they followed in batches to learn the way. There were 5 hunting routes and 1 new exploration route, so they had to memorize them all. Xiao Xian's family had a giant antler deer brought back by Cha-Cha for breakfast today. Caesar had gone into the forest with the other ferocious beasts of the tribe to hunt for prey, and had not returned yet. They followed the hunting team, so Xiao Xian was not worried. After building the house, before Xiao Xian could rest, he saw Lang Jie dragging a net bag over. I just caught them in the river. Take a look. Lang Jie untied the net bag and shook out the fish inside. When Xiao Xian came back from the shore in the morning, he saw Lang Jie casting the net. Xiao Xian asked Lang Jie to inform him when he caught any fish. Xiao Xian wanted to know what fish were still in the river. There aren't many fish. There are drumming crocodiles in the river. I didn't dare to go to the center of the river, so I caught them from the shore. Lang Jie explained. Before the river disappeared, if they cast the net directly, it would be easily broken by the river beasts, so they made fish fences. Every time they caught a variety of strange creatures, but now that the river was gone, they could cast the net again, but the fish they caught were very monotonous. He cast the net and caught some fish, but he didn't catch anything else. He only saw 2 or 3 piranhas with sharp teeth. Their mental state was good, but unfortunately, the drumming tribe's crocodiles were all around. The piranhas couldn't be arrogant here at all. They would only become the crocodile's food. In the morning, Xiao Xian saw a crocodile bite several piranhas. "I think the river won't be so dangerous in the future," Lang Jie said. The drumming tribe was here, so the crocodiles would not leave. The river had risen a lot compared to yesterday. In the morning, the tribesmen added a few rafts to the pontoon bridge, and the position of the rafts tied to the shore had also risen. However, now the river was rising slower and slower, and it was almost flat. In the future, the river would remain the same, unless there was another great change to change it. By the way, when I was casting the net today, I met people from the drumming tribe who came from the other side to borrow wood. I had a chat with them. Lang Jie told Xiao Xian about what happened in the morning. Because the forest of the drumming tribe was badly damaged, many trees were broken and several mountains had disappeared. The existing trees could not provide enough wood for them to build houses. There were only some small trees, unless they went further away to cut them down. If there was no Yinjiao incident, perhaps they would have used some thin wood instead. But now, there was a lot of wood here, and it was thick and strong enough. So the chief of the drumming tribe sent people over to borrow some wood. Most of their water moonstones were lost in the past disaster. Perhaps they were buried deep in the ground and could not be dug out. The small amount they had was traded for food by the traveling team. Now, if they wanted more wood, they could only borrow it. Ao and Zheng Luo both knew about this. It was just wood, so they did not care. They just gave some to the drumming tribe, and the two sides became closer. From time to time, people from the drumming tribe would come over to chat with the Yinjiao people. Lang Jie got the news from the drumming tribe's people who came to carry the wood. "Do you remember the Luo tribe?" Lang Jie asked. Xiao Xian thought for a moment. "Yes, they're a tribe that's good at making fishing nets." The Luo tribe was close to the river and had a mountain. In the past, they often went to the Pu tribe to trade. Xiao Xian had traded fishing nets with them, and also exchanged a few sets of fish skin clothing. The Luo tribe's fishing nets were indeed very sturdy. The fishing nets they made could last longer in the river, and would not be broken by the river beasts that were good at gnawing on vines and wood. "What happened to the Luo tribe?" Xiao Xian asked. "The Luo tribe is gone." Lang Ga's face was full of sympathy. "I don't know if anyone escaped, but most of the people, along with their fire seed, are gone." The Luo tribe did not have the drumming tribe's crocodiles to warn them. They were also close to the river, so when the disaster happened, they could not escape in time and disappeared along with the entire river bank. The drumming tribe's people also felt sad when they talked about it. After all, a tribe they once knew had disappeared in the great change of the world. It's not just the Luo tribe. I heard from the drumming tribe's traveling team that a few small tribes near the river are also gone. Lang Jie sighed. Someone called him from afar. He answered, then Lang Jie put away the fishing net and left. Lang Jie ran back not long after he left. "Xian, the people on the shore said someone is looking for you." "Who is looking for me?" Xiao Xian thought it was someone from the drumming tribe. He got up and walked over. "I heard that person is called Yang Sui." Lang Jie shouted. Chapter 583. Yang Sui. The shaman of the Rain tribe. Why did he come here at this time? Xiao Xian was puzzled. He put down his work and went to the riverbank with Lang Ga. Did he come here alone? Xiao Xian asked. No, there were a few others. I didn't see the exact number, but they seemed to be in a hurry, Lang Jie said. In a hurry? Was it for the tribe or for other reasons? When Xiao Xian came to the riverbank, Yang Sui and the others had just been led ashore. Because of the disaster, the mountain had been raised a lot. The part near the riverbank was very steep. The warriors of the tribe had been repairing that part for the past 2 days, so there were no intact roads or stairs for them to climb up. Yang Sui and the others were covered with mud and stone marks. They looked very embarrassed and tired. It made sense. The distance from the Rain tribe to here was quite far. Just looking at this group of people, they were already exhausted. If it weren't for the Flaming Horn warriors who helped them up, perhaps half of them wouldn't have been able to climb up. Seeing Xiao Xian, Yang Sui forced a smile and then sat down on the ground. It was rare for him to be in such a state. Let me take a break first. Yang Sui wanted to lie down on the ground. He was only a shaman. Compared to the other warriors of the Rain tribe, he was much weaker. Xiao Xian asked someone to bring some food. Looking at these haggard and tired people, they must be hungry. They wouldn't be short of water. Manjiu, bring some food. How did you find this place? Xiao Xian asked. I was going to the fearsome beast mountain forest. I heard that Yanjiao was migrating again, so I asked around and followed you all the way here. Yang Sui turned his head to look at the busy Flaming Horn tribe. They didn't look dispirited at all. He thought the Flaming Horn tribe would be in a bad mood after being forced to move because of the disaster. He didn't expect it to be completely different from what he expected. Yang Sui didn't explain the specific purpose of his visit. Xiao Xian didn't continue to ask. This wasn't a good place to chat. Yang Sui must have something else to say. The 20 people of the Rain tribe all looked confused and nervous. They were even more anxious than the Yanjiao team during the migration. They just didn't say anything. Something must have happened. Was the Rain tribe seriously affected by the disaster? After a short rest, Xiao Xian asked someone to send a message to the shaman and chief, telling them that the Rain tribe had come. Then he took Yang Sui and the others to his house. The house had just been built, so it was a little crowded with more than 20 people. So Yang Sui asked the others to wait outside. Because the place where the tribe received outsiders had not yet been built, they could only wait here. However, these people of the Rain tribe didn't care about this. They just waited outside the house quietly. Old Cook cooked a pot of meat soup and shared it with them. Then he sat on a stone outside the house and chatted with these people who came from afar. Old Ku rarely saw people from other tribes. After all, he couldn't go out with the travel team because of his leg injury. In fact, he was very interested in many things about other tribes. When there was no one else in the house, Yang Sui's face suddenly collapsed. He scratched his head and said, I'm afraid we have to migrate this time too. Why? Xiao Xian was surprised. Originally, he thought Yang Sui came here because of the disaster or the fire seed. But now it seemed that there was something else. In fact, the disaster in the past didn't have much impact on our tribe. At least we didn't suffer as many casualties as other tribes, Yang Sui said. The violent earthquake did cause houses to collapse and people were directly shaken from the ground. But in comparison, the Rain tribe didn't suffer much. When the earthquake was over, they could quickly resume their original life. As for the hot winter, the Rain tribe was short of water all year round. Now Yang Sui could pray for rain. Even if he only succeeded once in 10 times, it was enough for the Rain tribe to survive the disaster. What's more, they still had rain stones. The only thing they lacked the most was food. However, they stored grains and other things all year round, which could support them through that difficult period. Then why did you migrate the tribe? After a pause, Xiao Xian suddenly asked, the desert. Yang Sui smiled bitterly, who else could it be? Yang Sui rubbed his face to make himself more energetic and continued, I used to think that Rock Hill City would be more peaceful after driving away the other slave owners in the desert. But not long after the disaster, some slaves escaped from the desert and stole from our tribe. After we caught them, we interrogated them. Speaking of this, Yang Sui's expression was very strange, as if he couldn't believe it, but also as if he was worried about something. Those people were the slaves of the slave owners who were killed by Rock Hill City. They had been escaping in the desert, and some of them had gathered into small groups to survive. But after the disaster, most places in the desert were badly affected. Many people were directly buried in the sand because of the earthquake. This is not what I am most worried about. Taking a deep breath, Yang Sui looked at Xiao Xian. The two slaves we caught used to be close to the other side of the desert, close to the sea. However, he told me that the people who gathered on the other side of the sea were basically dead. They died under the waves and earthquake. Many places even disappeared directly. Not only that, when they left, they went to the coast to take a look. They said that there were many more places on the sea, and there seemed to be something on the sea. As he spoke, Yang Sui looked at Xiao Xian. Seeing that Xiao Xian was silent, Yang Sui continued, part of the desert disappeared, and some strange things appeared on the sea. Since then, Rock Hill City changed their target. They no longer cared about the people in other parts of the desert, and only dealt with those who were still alive near the coast. It was as if they wanted to clean up the people there and occupy the coast. Therefore, those who were lucky enough to survive near the coast all fled out of the desert. I remember that there were many people from Yanjiao who came out of the desert. You actually didn't come from the desert, but from the other side of the sea, right? That's right. Xiao Xian didn't deny it. Yang Sui's eyelids twitched. He couldn't help but stand up and ask impatiently, what's on the other side of the sea? Why did the people of Rock Hill City change like that? Do you know? What happened on the sea wasn't the main reason why Yang Sui was so worried. He just felt great unease from Rock Hill City's actions. If the disaster really closed the distance between the two sides, then what the slaves saw might really be what I know. Xiao Xian didn't expect something like this to happen. It happened only a year after they left. On the other side of the sea, there are tribes and slave masters. Many slave masters. But you asked if Rock Hill City had anything to do with them. From what I know, the Shi family has a grudge with them. I knew it. Yang Sui scratched his head with his fingers. The Rain tribe was close to the desert, so they knew more about slave owners. For thousands of years, there were several large boxes of records about slave owners. There was once an ancestor of the Rain tribe 1,000 years ago who mentioned that slave owners in the desert came from the other side of the sea. He always knew that there were people at the end of the desert, on the other side of the sea. It was just that they were far away. In the past 1,000 years, he didn't hear of anyone coming from that side. Even when the desert changed and Rock Hill City became the ruler of the desert, they didn't think about that direction. It wasn't until Xiao Xian and the other Yanjiao people came out of the desert that Yang Sui was triggered. After that, Yang Sui flipped through many of his ancestors' records. The more he read, the more frightened he became. Then he thought about what Xiao Xian told him about the fire seed. Yang Sui couldn't stop worrying. Now, the desert changed again. Rock Hill City's actions made Yang Sui even more worried. He always felt that it wasn't safe to continue staying there. He even dreamed that the fire seed was extinguished. After a year, he lost weight. After the disaster, Yang Sui finally decided to bring some people to Xiao Xian to ask about the fire seed. At the same time, he also wanted to find out about the other side of the sea. He didn't just mention it casually. He really did have an idea. The slave masters in Rock Hill City were too dangerous. The Rain tribe couldn't fight against them. In the past, there were many slave masters and many forces in the desert. They could still fight among themselves. Now, the desert was Rock Hill City's territory. What if they wanted to expand in the future? Now, he heard from Xiao Xian that Rock Hill City had a grudge against the people on the other side of the sea. If they fought, would Rock Hill City target the tribes near the desert when they lacked slaves? As long as the fire seed was extinguished, there would be more people for them to enslave. Then the Rain tribe would be in even more danger. Yang Sui didn't care about the other tribes near the desert. He only cared about the future of the Rain tribe. So, what's your decision now? Xiao Xian looked at Yang Sui's changing face and asked. Yang Sui gritted his teeth, move. We must move. Chapter 584. However, when it came to migration, Yang Sui hesitated. In fact, when Xiao Xian brought the Yinjiao people out of the desert last year, he already had the idea of migrating the tribe. It was not only about the fire seed, but also about the future of the tribe. However, migrating the tribe was a big deal for the whole tribe. He dared not make the decision on his own. Even though he had a high status in the Rain tribe, he could not make the decision on his own when it came to migration or the fire seed. He had been discussing with other senior members of the tribe until now. After a year's work, he had convinced many people. However, the decision to migrate the tribe had been made, but where to move to would lead to a new round of arguments. Some people suggested moving to the central part of the continent, where there was plenty of water, good weather, and fertile soil. It was a good place to plant crops and people in the tribe could live a good life there. However, as soon as this suggestion was put forward, it was opposed by more people. He was well aware of the fighting capacity of the Rain tribe. All the traveling teams knew how competitive the central region was. Moreover, there were too many powerful warriors in the central region. Just the few big tribes alone could suppress them. How could it be easy to pick up the food among these powerful warriors? Besides, the situation in the central part of the continent had long been formed. It was hard for the Rain tribe to find a place to stay in the central part of the continent. Speaking of this, Yang Sui felt sad. In fact, a long, long time ago, the Rain tribe was also very strong. However, if he said this now, he would be ridiculed. Now the Rain tribe had been declining. Not to mention the big tribes in the central part of the continent, even some medium-sized tribes in the central part of the continent could beat them black and blue. Yang Sui had thought about whether he should go to the Yinjiao tribe. When they were discussing the migration location, the Yinjiao tribe had already destroyed Wuxia and dominated that area. Although it was close to the fearsome beast forest, the Yinjiao tribe was there. It should be fine, right? Besides, there were not many tribes there. They could find a place a little further away from the fearsome beast forest. This was also his purpose when he left the tribe to find the Yinjiao people in the fearsome beast forest. However, halfway there, he heard that the Yinjiao tribe had migrated again. He could only look for them all the way here. Thinking back to what he saw before he entered the house, the place where the Yinjiao tribe was now seemed to be more stable. Are you going to settle down here? Yang Sui asked tentatively. Yes, we can't live in the fearsome beast forest anymore. Seeing Yang Sui rolling his eyes, Xiao Xian guessed something and asked, what do you think? Ahem, a little bit. After thinking for a while, Yang Sui said, what do you think if the Rain tribe comes here? Here. Xiao Xian pointed at his feet and drew a line to indicate the riverbank. No, no, no. I'm not talking about the river. Yang Sui hurriedly said. When he came here, he heard from the drumming tribe that the Flaming Horn tribe had a forest behind them. It was a place as dangerous as the fearsome beast forest, maybe even more dangerous. Hearing this, Yang Sui's feet trembled. They didn't have much ambition and never thought of fighting for territory with ferocious beasts. Only ferocious tribes like Yinjiao would choose this kind of place. However, knowing the dangers behind the forest also had its benefits. That was, there would be less competition. Not many tribes dared to live here. Even if there was a war in the desert, it would definitely not reach here. I heard that several tribes disappeared over there. Yang Sui pointed to the other side of the river, where the drumming tribe lived. What do you mean? Xiao Xian understood. Yang Sui wanted to find a place to live near the drumming tribe. In the past disaster, several small tribes near the river were destroyed. The Rain tribe wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to occupy a place. Haha. Yang Sui rubbed his hands. That was what he meant. Although the drumming tribe looked fierce, he could tell that the drumming tribe didn't have much ambition. They were easy to get along with after getting to know their tempers. They could even rely on the Flaming Horn's support. Don't think he didn't know anything. The Flaming Horn tribe had a lot of things in their hands, they weren't interested in a small tribe like theirs. Plus, the Flaming Horn fire seed was gone. If they moved to this area, they wouldn't have to worry about being suppressed by the fire seed. Yang Sui knew a lot of things. He could even connect the notes left by his ancestors to the current situation in the desert. After thinking about it, he felt that it was safest to rely on Yinjiao. The tribes in the central region were not suitable. There were too many tribes relying on them. If the Rain tribe went there, those tribes wouldn't care. But Yinjiao was different. They knew each other. We've known each other for a long time. Haha. Yang Sui laughed. Xiao Xian spread his hands. That's not Yinjiao's territory. You can make your own decisions. But I have to remind you that even if we don't have any conflicts, I can't guarantee what will happen if the Rain tribe makes trouble. Hey, I know. Of course, I understand. After chatting with Xiao Xian for a while, Yang Sui went to visit the two shamans and the chief of Yinjiao. Then he left with more than 20 people of the Rain tribe. He planned to talk to the people of the drumming tribe and make a final decision. The people of the drumming tribe were still talking about the Luo tribe and other tribes that didn't survive the disaster. While they were sighing, they heard that the Rain tribe intended to move here. They didn't care much about the Rain tribe. As long as they weren't greedy and cruel people, the people of the drumming tribe didn't care. Knowing that the water moon stones came from the drumming tribe, the Rain tribe's people's eyes lit up. They didn't want to rob them, but they felt that it would be easier and more cost-effective to trade with them, just like how they could exchange for shells more easily in the past. They didn't expect that moving here would bring them such benefits. Without shells, they still had water moonstones. Do the people of the drumming tribe eat grains? We can plant it, all of us in the Rain tribe can plant it. What? We don't eat grains, but we like meat. We can raise animals, cattle, sheep, horses and so on. What kind do you like to eat? We'll sell them to you at a cheaper price. Pottery? Linen? We can do that too. We can do anything. We can learn even if we don't know how to. So, when Xiao Xian was discussing with the shamans and chiefs, he heard from the warriors who came back from the river bank that the people of the drumming tribe and the Rain tribe had become good friends. It seems that the Rain tribe is likely to move here. Xiao Xian said. The shaman thought of something and smiled. In fact, the Rain tribe has a long history. They may not be worse than the big tribes in the central region today. But I don't know how they became like this. They know far more things than we know. It's just that the Rain tribe's living place limited them. The people of the Rain tribe said that they could farm, raise animals and make pottery. They weren't bragging. The ancestors of the Rain tribe did master a lot of skills. But later, the people of the Rain tribe gradually gave up those skills because they could get a lot of good things without those skills. But now, in order to survive, they might pick up those skills again. Chapter 585. After destruction came new life. There used to be no river here, but 1,000 years ago, the earth and sky changed. The earth suddenly split open and separated the Flaming Horn ancestors from the other side of the river, forming a huge river that blocked their way back. Now, the earth changed again. The big river turned into a small river, and the split land closed. On both sides of the river, one side fell down, and the other rose up. The Flaming Horn tribe's side was uprooted. The mountain they used to live on was now much higher. When they looked up, they could see the white peak of the mountain surrounded by water vapor. There was a layer of white snow there. The place where the fire pond used to be was now buried under the white snow. The one that fell down was the drumming tribe's side of the river. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many tribes near the river that were destroyed. No matter how strong the fire seed was, it could keep burning underground. But without people, the fire seed was like a fire source that had burned to the end but had no more firewood. It would disappear quickly and then be destroyed in the depths of the earth. When Yang Sui went to survey the nearby terrain to determine the destination, he felt that the fire seed nearby had been extinguished. The fire seed was not strong, so it was extinguished quickly. The people of the Luo tribe were all buried deep in the earth. If the Rain tribe moved here, there would be no conflict between the fire seeds. In the past, tribes like the Luo tribe liked to be close to the river. But the Rain tribe was different. They planned to plant crops, so they would find a place with more flat land, a little farther from the river. Plus, with the Luo tribe's example, they didn't have the courage to be so close to the river. However, the Rain tribe could divide more land into their own territory. After all, they still needed water to irrigate their crops. After confirming the location, Yang Sui sent 2 bags of shells to the people of the drumming tribe, asking them to help guard the land and prevent other tribes from robbing it. The people of the drumming tribe had a good impression of the Rain tribe. To some extent, they all liked water and got along well with each other. The people of the Rain tribe worshipped water. Their belief in rain was far beyond the imagination of the Yanjiao people. Otherwise, Yang Sui, who could pray for rain, wouldn't have such a high status in the Rain tribe. After confirming the location, Yang Sui hurriedly left with his people. They had to move their tribe here as soon as possible and prepare for winter. Although there was still a long time before winter, the migration would still take some time. Since there were more things to prepare, they had to hurry. The migration of the Rain tribe was much more troublesome than the migration of the Yanjiao tribe. The Yanjiao tribe had already merged their fire seed, so they didn't need to bring their fire seed with them. However, as a tribe that still had their fire seed, the Rain tribe had to be more careful. It was very risky to bring a fire seed on the road. This was also why many tribes were unwilling to move once they had settled down. It was too troublesome and risky. When Yanjiao returned to the old land from the other side of the river, they also brought the incomplete fire seed with them. That kind of nervous tension was indeed uncomfortable. Yang Sui also wanted to try to integrate the fire seed before moving the tribe. Unfortunately, the Rain tribe might not be able to discuss this matter immediately. After all, many years had passed, and the idea of integrating the fire seed was deeply ingrained. Many people couldn't accept it at the moment. On the way back, Yang Sui sighed. There was no other way. They had to solve the migration problem first, then deal with the people in the tribe later. In the Yanjiao tribe, the buildings were rebuilt one by one. They were even more magnificent than before. Many of them were drawn by Xiao Xian and finalized after discussing with the craftsmen who were good at building houses. For example, the meeting hall on the mountain, and the 50-meter-tall watchtowers were built on the mountainside and the river bank at the foot of the mountain. Things were different now. Before the river disappeared, they didn't need to guard against the other side of the river. They only needed to keep an eye on the river. But now, they had to guard against the other side of the river. Although the drumming tribe and the Rain tribe weren't hostile to Yanjiao, it was better to be cautious. Just because they weren't hostile, it didn't mean others weren't hostile. They hadn't started planting the 1,000-grain gold yet. Now wasn't the best time to plant it. The 1,000-grain gold was too precious and the tribesmen didn't want to waste it. They could only cultivate the land first and plant it next year. In the other fields, crops suitable for this season had already been planted. The cabbages were harvested when they were in the fearsome beast forest. They were temporarily with the shamanis. There were still some cabbages left on the ox cart. They were planted first. The veins of the sky couldn't be planted on the mountain. The mountain where Yanjiao lived wasn't suitable for planting. So, they planted them in another area, guarded by soldiers every day. The normal farmland and the special farmland were separated. The normal farmland was more common on the mainland. There were also wanderers working there. The special farmland was mostly planted with seeds from the Jeju. The veins of the sky were also planted in the special farmland. In the future, the 1,000-grain gold would be planted there too. The special farmland was taken care of by Xiao Xian, the shamaness, and the chief. The soldiers guarding it were also decided by them. No one else could get close without permission. Life in the Yanjiao tribe was back on track. After the hunting team was formed, they began to hunt regularly. After 4 years, many Yanjiao people were very excited to return to this place again. Even the fearsome beasts were more active. Because of the great changes in the world and the chaos in the forest, the territories of the beasts they were familiar with had changed. They needed to calculate and map again. But that wasn't a problem. After satisfying the Yanjiao's needs, they would trade some with the drumming tribe. However, the drumming tribe was now poor. They didn't have any water moonstones, so they could only write IOUs. This didn't matter. They weren't worried about the drumming tribe reneging on their debt. On this day, after Xiao Xian fed the green-faced fanged beast some blood, he went to the casting room. When he came out, he heard from the watchtower that the Rain tribe had arrived. According to the patrolling warriors who were watching over there, the Rain tribe was not in a good state after a long migration. There were many injured people in the tribe, and even those who were not injured were dispirited, looking haggard. However, when they arrived, the entire Rain tribe burst into cheers. They were going to welcome a new life here. After taking this step, there was no turning back. Instead of reminiscing about the past, it was better to fight for the future. Not long after Xiao Xian received the news, Yang Sui brought people over to borrow food. They hadn't seen each other for a while. Yang Sui looked darker and thinner. When he came over, he was carried on someone's back. This migration was really not easy. As a shaman, he had to protect the fire seed and build a fire pit when they arrived at the destination. The journey was difficult. They used to be rich, but now they had no money in their pockets. It was difficult to even take out a piece of shell. There were many injured and hungry people in the tribe. Now they could only borrow from Yanjiao. 1 year. Don't worry, we can pay it back by this time next year. Maybe it won't take a year, maybe half a year. Although Yang Sui was not in good condition, his eyes were bright. He was still confident about the future. Therefore, not long after Yanjiao settled here, he began to be a creditor. He had 2 debts, one from the drumming tribe and the other from the Rain tribe. Chapter 586. After eating, Yang Sui ordered his men to bring the food he borrowed from Yanjiao back to the tribe. He would stay in Yanjiao for the time being. After a few pieces of meat and a bowl of soup, the half-dead Yang Sui was full of energy again. Knowing what Xiao Xian cared about, Yang Sui didn't keep him in suspense. When we left, the situation in the desert was getting worse. Yang Sui paused slightly when he said, there. After all, to him, there was the place where the Rain tribe had lived for thousands of years. This was also the reason why many people objected when Yang Sui first proposed to move the tribe. Tribesmen cared a lot about their roots. To them, that place was their homeland, their roots, the place where their ancestors lived. Even if it was barren and desolate, bordered by the desert, they were still willing to stay there. If it weren't for the great changes in the world and the threat of the slave masters, even if Yang Sui proposed to move the tribe, there would still be strong opposition. As for the bad situation Yang Sui mentioned, that was only for the wandering slaves and slave masters, as well as the tribes living in the surrounding area. It wasn't the same for the people of Rock Hill City. On the other hand, it also meant that the ruler of the desert, Rock Hill City, was still on the move. Do you know that half of the desert is now left? Yang Sui exclaimed. Even though Xiao Xian was prepared, he couldn't help but be shocked when he heard the news. Such a large desert was directly reduced by half in the past earthquake. It would be strange if it didn't cause a commotion. Xiao Xian couldn't help but worry about his sleeping slave. He didn't know how that guy was doing now. Xiao Xian could feel that Sapphire was still alive, but he couldn't confirm its current situation. Yang Sui glanced at Xiao Xian's expression and asked, "Do you want to go to the desert to take a look?" "That's an idea. I advise you not to go now. Now that the desert has shrunk by half, it's easier for Rock Hill City to control the desert. Plus, they're still cleaning up the desert. You'll be attacked if you go." Even if the desert had shrunk by half, it was still huge for humans. But Yang Sui's words were true. If what Yang Sui had heard from the slaves who escaped from the desert was true, then the people of Rock Hill City might have predicted this a long time ago. Considering the events of the past few years and the fact that the Rock Hill City team had entered the fearsome beast forest to search for the green-faced fanged beast and then left in a hurry, Xiao Xian didn't believe that there was nothing wrong. But if Rock Hill City had already anticipated this and were waiting to take revenge for 1,000 years ago, did they really have that many people? Or were there really that many slaves who could fight against the slave masters on the other side? If they didn't have enough manpower, they would definitely attack the tribes, but Rock Hill City didn't do that. That meant that they had sufficient manpower and were well prepared. Where did this person come from? This was something that Xiao Xian had no way of knowing. However, Xiao Xian had a feeling that Rock Hill City had a trump card up their sleeve. Although Xiao Xian really wanted to go to the desert to investigate, now was not a good time. First, Rock Hill City was on the move and would treat anyone who entered the desert as an enemy. Second, Yanjiao had just stabilized and many things were not done yet. The Rain tribe had also moved to the nearby area and there might be other tribes on the move as well. His own matters were not settled yet and he didn't have time to care about others. Xiao Xian couldn't just leave. After thinking about it, Xiao Xian also thought it through. Curiosity and worry were useless now. The most important thing was to develop themselves. As long as the tribe was strong, everything would be fine. After Yang Sui left, Xiao Xian went out to the mountains to look for Zheng Luo. He decided to go hunting with Zheng Luo and the others in a few days. As soon as he went out, Xiao Xian bumped into old Ko who had just returned from the cave at the foot of the mountain. Stone tools weren't what the tribe lacked the most now. After they had pottery and metal tools, stone tools were gradually being replaced. Old Ko also made some stone tools but he was just itching to play with them. He was now teaching children at the foot of the mountain. Some children who had lost their parents and guardians were still arranged to live in the Crouching Ox Cave. Now that the tribe was starting to develop, they were no longer in a state of muddling through. The education of young children was also focused on. Before he left, Xiao Xian had organized similar teaching activities. Later on, he went to the old haunt and built a place similar to a school. Not long ago, Xiao Xian discussed with the shaman and the chief and started a more detailed education. There were also 3 brick houses built on the mountainside. There was also the empty training ground that was originally used for training, forming a simple school. However, for the orphans living in the Crouching Ox Cave, other than the school on the mountainside, there were also some relatively free people from the tribe who would teach them from time to time. Old Ko was one of them. There was less demand for stone tools in the tribe, but that didn't mean they didn't need this skill. When they were in the mountains, they still had to rely on stone tools for emergencies. So when Old Ko was free, he would go to the Crouching Ox Cave to teach the children how to make stone tools. He didn't expect the kids to be interested. As long as someone wanted to learn, Old Ko would happily continue to teach. Other than stone tools, he also set traps. Hunting skills like this were necessary for the Yanjiao people who hunted for a living. Even if they couldn't master it, it was always good to know more. Although the tribe had developed well and had the resources to build more houses, the children who had lost their relatives continued to live in the Crouching Ox Cave out of nostalgia. It was a special place where their ancestors had stayed before. Old Ku often encouraged the children by saying, "Your elder Xiao Xian came out from this cave." The Crouching Ox Cave now wasn't the same as the one Xiao Xian used to live in. If it was said that the cave used to be rough, now it was well renovated. When it was dark, there were water moonstones to light up the place. They didn't have to worry about food and water. Naturally, there would be people to provide them. The food was also much better than what Xiao Xian used to have. Some small rooms that used to store junk were also cleaned up. Except for the stone room with the mural, the other rooms were made into small rooms, just like dormitories. The bunk beds were made by Xiao Xian and the carpenters. They weren't covered with the withered grass that Xiao Xian and the others used to use, but animal skin or linen. Of course, other than the most basic necessities, if the children wanted to get more things, they still had to rely on themselves. It was impossible to get something for nothing, and the tribe didn't want to raise people like that. When Xiao Xian went there yesterday, the children were still gathered inside the cave. In the spacious open space near the entrance of the cave, they were holding branches and learning how to write and count on the sand table. As for the crooked words written on the walls with years of history, they were left behind by the seniors who used to live there. They were inspirational words left behind by the seniors who used to live there. Everything was developing in a good direction. Xiao Xian stood on the mountainside and looked into the distance. When he stood here before, he could only see the small houses scattered at the foot of the mountain and the vast river in the distance. Now, the scenery was different. Chapter 587. On the third day of the Rain Tribe's arrival, Xiao Xian followed the hunting team to hunt. Now, the advance group did not take action for the time being. The disaster in the past had caused many changes in the forest. In addition, they had been away for 4 years, so they had to familiarize themselves with the most basic hunting routes. This time, Xiao Xian did not follow the hunting route he was familiar with. Instead, he followed the person who opened up the 6th hunting route. Compared to the other 5 hunting routes, the 6th one took the shortest time to open up, and the route was also the shortest. When this hunting route was opened, Xiao Xian had left the tribe to go to the other side of the river. Before this hunting route was fully opened up, the tribe had already moved. A satisfactory hunting route was not something that could be opened up overnight. Even 1 or 2 years would not be enough. Now, Xiao Xian and the other warriors of the tribe continued to open up this hunting route. Now that there were more people in the tribe, even if they split into 2 groups, there were more people on each hunting route than before. Duo Kong and the others who came from the other side of the river were full of curiosity about this place. This place was even stranger than some places in the fearsome beast forest. Whoosh, the sound of an arrow piercing through the air was heard. There was a muffled sound of flesh being pierced, and the sound of blood splashing at high speed on the leaves. Roar! The angry roar of the beast made the surrounding leaves tremble. However, if one was familiar with the beasts in the forest, they would be able to tell that this roar was strong on the outside but weak on the inside. It sounded angry, but if one listened carefully, they would be able to tell that it was timid. The huge figure that was running forward could not be seen among the even larger towering ancient trees, but its position could be determined by the movements of the branches. The prey was running in a panic, and the branches were constantly breaking and making cracking sounds as it ran. More than 10 figures followed the giant beast closely, shuttling between the trees nimbly and quickly. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Several more spears were thrown out like cannonballs, heading straight for the target. Although the fleeing figure in front of it was large, its speed was not slow. Even though it was panicking now, it was still familiar with this place after all. It instinctively ran towards a place full of bushes in front of it. Those shrubs were as tall as a person, and their branches were dense but very thin. Every thin branch had many thin thorns. If one stood at a high place and looked at it from afar, it looked like a large brush stuck to the ground, and could directly scrape off a person's flesh bit by bit. However, the thorny shrubs were nothing to the behemoths, who had a layer of tough skin and sturdy hooves. They could still run away by stepping on them. However, this was not the case for humans. If it ran to that area, it would be a real headache for the hunting team. The people chasing after it avoided the broken branches. No matter how strong they would not be able to withstand the blow from the giant beast. Seeing that the giant beast was getting closer and closer to the bush area, the hunters threw spears and shot arrows one after another. The giant beast was already injured in many places, and when it ran, it carried a bloody wind. Spears stabbed into the giant beast's body, and were carried along as it ran. Just as the giant beast was about to step into the bush area, a few figures suddenly jumped up from both sides. Under the support of the totem power, the tyrannical strength became more and more unyielding. The person who leaped up held his weapon tightly and waved his arm to chop down. The strong wind that was stirred up made a whoosh sound. The nearby branches seemed to be pushed by a fierce wind and were blown to the other side. Puff! 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 The sharp blade cut through the thick tough hide, and when it left, the tip of the blade flew out with a line of blood. The giant beast let out an unwilling howl, and finally fell to the ground with a thud due to its heavy injuries. The people who came next gave it another stab, and when the giant beast was completely dead, they approached it. Xiao Xian took out the water bottle hanging on his waist with the hand that was not holding the sword. There was only a little water left in the bottle. He stabbed the sword into the ground, and picked a leaf that was about 4 palm size. He washed it with the remaining water in the bottle, and then rolled the leaf into a funnel, and put it on the bleeding spot on the giant beast's neck. The bright and thick blood flowed along the rolled leaf into the bottle. The blood of a fearsome beast could be preserved for a longer time than the blood of other beasts. If some grass juice was added to prevent the blood from coagulating, it could be preserved for a longer time. When hunting in the forest, if it was not convenient to roast meat, they would use the blood of fearsome beasts to temporarily replenish their strength. After drinking a mouthful of beast blood, the smell of blood filled his nose. If it was someone who did not like the smell of blood, they would probably vomit, but Xiao Xian was already used to the smell. Different fearsome beasts had different tastes. Xiao Xian could now not only tolerate the smell of beast blood, but he could also laugh and talk with the other warriors about which type of beast blood tasted better, just like a group of wine lovers talking about which type of wine suited their taste. Wiping the blood from his mouth, Xiao Xian looked at the sky. Now that the sun was already setting, they had to deal with this prey as soon as possible and bring it back to the stronghold. The people who were chasing them had already caught up. Seeing that Xiao Xian and the others had already killed the fearsome beast, they did not say much. While there was still blood, they quickly took out their bottles to collect the beast blood. After carrying the beast back to the stronghold, Xiao Xian took out a roll of animal skin, summarized what he had seen in the past 2 days, and recorded it on the roll. This was a simple map, and it was the 6th hunting route. Now, every time they opened up a new section, there would be an additional section on the map. In addition to hunting fearsome beasts, Xiao Xian had another purpose. In the cave of the stronghold, other than the warriors who were resting, there were also bursts of whistling sounds. It sounded like the wind was blowing, and from time to time, there was also the sound of metal clashing. Xiao Xian brought out a green-faced fanged beast, the one with broken fangs. The tribe did not have much food and grain for them, but they needed the green-faced fanged beast to grow normally. Xiao Xian wanted to bring one out during the hunt and let it find food on its own. After being enslaved, the green-faced fanged beasts were not absolutely obedient, but at least they were obedient most of the time. Just in case, they still had to be bound. Vine ropes could not bind them tightly, so Xiao Xian specially made a bronze chain. The green-faced fanged beasts could easily break the bones of many beasts, and even stone, but it could not break the new bronze chain made with their own blood. After tying them with a chain, if Xiao Xian had free time during the hunt, and if he was sure that there were no dangerous fearsome beasts nearby, he would lead them out and let them find food on their own. Fortunately, Xiao Xian could keep up with the green-faced fanged beast's speed. Otherwise, if it was someone else, they would not be able to handle it. If that happened, it would not be a human leading the beast, but a beast leading a human. It had been 8 days since they entered the forest. Xiao Xian really did find a few types of food that the green-faced fanged beasts could barely eat. He recorded them one by one and brought some back. If the forest could provide food for the green-faced fanged beasts, they would not have to continue eating the cabbage in the field. In the future, they could just let the hunters bring it back. Xiao Xian, do you think the weather will be hot or cold this winter? Duo Kong asked. I don't know. We should be able to tell in a few days. Xiao Xian looked out of the cave. Time passed really quickly. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. Although he did not know if this winter would be as strange as the previous 2 years, Xiao Xian was not worried. Even if there were any abnormalities, it would not be a big deal. As they were talking, the person in charge of guarding outside came over. Boss. Elder, come out and see. There are so many birds in the sky. Chapter 588. Xiao Xian kept the animal skin scroll in his hand and hurried out of the cave. Why would there be a flock of birds at this time? They didn't hear any big movements in the forest, so it was impossible to startle the birds. Moreover, if it was just a small flock of birds, the people guarding outside wouldn't be so shocked. Even though Xiao Xian knew that there must be a large flock of birds in the sky, when he really walked out of the cave and looked at the sky, he realized that he had underestimated it. The dense flock of birds in the sky was like a dark cloud that suddenly appeared, covering most of the afterglow of the setting sun, casting only a shadow. Why are there so many birds? Where did they come from? Even the people who first participated in the development of this hunting route had never encountered such a thing. In the past, when we developed this hunting route, we didn't see anything like this. They were the people who knew the best about this hunting route, but this was the first time they saw such a scene. What are those birds? I can't see clearly, they're flying too high. They don't look small, and they're flying very fast. Even if they're big and fly fast, with such a large number of birds, are they migrating? The people looking at the sky casually expressed their opinions, but Xiao Xian's heart skipped a beat. According to the time in the tribe, at this time, it was indeed autumn in many places. In cold places, the temperature dropped early. Could it be that they were migrating to warmer places? But if that was the case, they had never been seen here before, so why did they suddenly appear now? They didn't know where the flock of birds in the sky came from, and where they were going, so the hunting team still had to continue. Everyone, be careful. Duo Kong said to the others with a stern face, then turned and strode into the cave. When Xiao Xian also walked into the cave, Duo Kong hurried over. At this time, he looked nervous, completely different from the sternness he had when he was warning the others outside the cave. Duo Kong lowered his voice, probably because he was too excited, and his voice was trembling at the beginning. Xiao Xian, why do you think those birds in the sky suddenly flew up? Could it be? Could it be? Is there something wrong? Xiao Xian paused for a moment, then understood. Duo Kong was worried about another catastrophe. It was no wonder that Duo Kong was so nervous and frightened. After all, he had experienced the previous disaster and was extremely paranoid. Whenever he saw a similar scene, he would think in that direction. When he left the old haunt, there were also flocks of birds coming out of the ferocious beast mountain forest when the world changed. Xiao Xian pondered for a moment. He didn't have the same feeling of fear and uneasiness that he had during the cataclysm. He looked at the green-faced fanged beast that was sleeping soundly in the cave and said, I don't think so. Duo Kong didn't dare to breathe. He continued to stare at Xiao Xian. Why don't you tie another knot? What he meant was that he wanted Xiao Xian to perform a knot divination. Otherwise, he would feel uneasy. That's fine too. Today's hunt had already ended, so it wouldn't matter if he spent some energy on divination. Xiao Xian was about to look for a straw rope when Duo Kong handed it over. Xiao Xian looked at the straw rope and then looked at Duo Kong. This person usually didn't use such a thin straw rope. Cough, I just made a little too much when I was making the straw rope. I kept it for later use, said Duo Kong. He didn't use such a thin straw rope himself, but ever since he saw Xiao Xian's ability in knot divination, he developed a habit of making straw ropes that were thin and easy to tie. If Xiao Xian didn't have any straw rope, he could provide some. Not only Duo Kong, but Zheng Luo, Ta, and Gigu all did the same thing in the tribe. They just didn't encounter a situation where Xiao Xian had to perform a divination. Xiao Xian adjusted his breathing and then picked up the straw rope. He closed his eyes and began the divination. He only wanted to know about the birds in the sky. Where did they come from and where did they go? After a while, Xiao Xian opened his eyes and looked at the completed knot in his hand. After reading the conclusion, he frowned. What? What happened? Duo Kong was so nervous that his teeth were chattering. He didn't want to hear the terrible news from Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian shook his head. It's not a disaster. Duo Kong let out a long sigh. But. Duo Kong held his breath and glared at Xiao Xian. It's a little strange, said Xiao Xian. What's strange? Duo Kong couldn't calm down. Xiao Xian pointed in a direction. The divination didn't give us accurate information, but we know that the birds came from that direction. That direction? Duo Kong thought carefully about the map he had seen. In the fearsome beast mountain forest, other than the 6 hunting routes, there were also some places that were not often visited. Duo Kong was thinking about the places in that direction on the map. However, this forest was very big. Even though the Yanjiao tribe had lived here for almost 1,000 years, the places they had visited were very limited. The map they had drawn was just the tip of the iceberg. Duo Kong couldn't deduce anything with just the direction. Xiao Xian couldn't figure out what was in that direction either, so he put it aside for the time being. What surprised Xiao Xian and the others was that in the following period of time, they saw flocks of birds flying in the sky one after another. However, the flocks were different every time, and there were many different types of birds. Moreover, these flocks of birds only flew in that direction. Even when Xiao Xian and the others returned to the tribe from the hunting ground, they didn't see the flocks of birds fly back. Seeing such a situation, everyone had a question in their heart: what happened? When the other hunting teams from the other 5 hunting routes met up with them and communicated with them, the other hunting teams had also seen the same flocks of birds, but at different times. After all, there was still some distance between the hunting routes. This question made the Yanjiao tribe, which had just settled down, depressed again. The 2 shamans were also depressed. They didn't feel any danger, nor did they see any signs of change in the weather. So why was this happening? It was said that the beasts in the forest and the birds in the sky could react to danger in advance. It was because of this that the people of Yanjiao were worried. Why was this happening? The atmosphere in the tribe was tense again. Some of the warriors even began to make stone tools. Metal tools were limited, so they had to make more stone tools as backup. The blacksmiths in the forge were under more pressure, and they worked overtime every day. Whether it was a natural disaster or war, they had to be prepared. In the last few days, they still saw flocks of birds flying in the sky from time to time. Even if they weren't directly above Yanjiao, the people standing on the watchtowers or near the top of the mountain could still see the flocks of birds flying in the sky. After observing, Xiao Xian found that the birds in the sky started from the large, fast, strong, and ferocious birds in the beginning. Gradually, they became smaller, weaker, and more ferocious birds. Until one day, when Xiao Xian was standing on the watchtower on the mountainside, he suddenly saw a green figure flying over. Chapter 589. Xiao Xian had been watching the flock of birds fly past the edge of the tribe, but he couldn't see clearly what kind of birds they were. Cha-Cha wasn't there either, so Xiao Xian could only watch from the watchtower. They often saw flocks of birds during this period of time. Perhaps there were flocks of birds that didn't pass by the tribe that weren't noticed, but the flocks of birds in the tribe were shocking enough. Because there was nothing out of the ordinary, the people in the tribe could only watch the sky anxiously every day and make a record. The figure that suddenly left the flock surprised Xiao Xian. When it was in the flock, Xiao Xian couldn't see it clearly, but when it left the flock, it stood out. The green figure left the flock of birds and changed direction. It didn't follow the flock, but flew directly towards the tribe. Then, a few more figures flew out of the flock, followed by a few more. Some were as big as the one in the lead, and some were smaller. They flew up and down, and weren't as steady as the one in the lead. Xiao Xian immediately took out a wooden whistle and blew it, indicating that the people in other places should not attack the figures in the sky who had left the flock of birds. There were watchtowers in other places, and they must have seen them. When the green figure in the sky flew closer, the people in the other watchtowers recognized it. "Hey, look, isn't that the duck from before?" A Yanjiao warrior who came from the other side of the sea exclaimed. "What duck? You mean the bird in the sky?" The Yanjiao warrior who had never seen the duck before was confused. "It must be. I think it looks like it." Another person shouted out. Xiao Xian looked at the figures flying over and blew the wooden whistle rhythmically. Back when he was in the tribe on the other side of the sea, he had also blown the whistle with this rhythm. He wasn't sure if the duck still remembered this sound. The fat duck seemed hesitant, and looked around cautiously. It circled in the air, as if trying to figure out where to fly to. When it saw Xiao Xian, it immediately flew towards Xiao Xian. Although Cha-Cha wasn't in the tribe, Gigu's snow-white falcon was still guarding against the birds in the sky. Xiao Xian's whistle had been timely. Just as the falcon was about to attack the green duck, the whistle stopped it from moving. Xiao Xian was sure that the one flying towards them was the one he caught on his way back from Gongjia Mountain. However, this green duck was quite fat when he was on the other side of the sea. Now, it looked much shriveled. No wonder the warriors from the other side of the sea were unsure when they saw it. Back then, that duck was so fat. One duck was as fat as two ducks. Now, not only was it skinny, it was also listless. As it approached the watchtower, it looked at the other warriors as guards. Perhaps sensing the duck's wariness toward strangers, the warriors standing on the top of the watchtower with Xiao Xian all took a few steps back. After a while, the green duck flapped its wings and landed. It stood on the handrail and called out to Xiao Xian. Quack! Its cry was a little strange compared to other wild ducks, but there was a hint of happiness in its voice. Flap flap, the other ducks that followed closely behind also followed suit, resting on the railings and handrails one after another. Hence, when the tribesmen looked up at the watchtower, they saw a circle of green ducks standing on the top of the tower. Someone recognized the ducks and laughed loudly. Are our ducks back? When the others who didn't know the story heard this, they also guessed the origin of these ducks. When the people from the other side of the sea came back, both sides talked about the ducks raised by the tribe, especially the green ducks. The people who were busy at the animal pens also rushed over excitedly. When the people who took care of the duck pens left the tribe, they were full of regrets. They thought they would never see the ducks again, but they didn't expect to see them again. Xiao Xian counted the ducks standing around. When they left, the green duck did not bring its second-generation ducks with it. They were still leisurely paddling in the water. There were only about 30 ducklings back then, but now, there were more than 50 standing in front of Xiao Xian. They were of different sizes. The big ones were almost as big as the fat duck, while the small ones were less than 2/3 of their height. There were only about 25 big ducks. These must be the second generation of the first batch of ducks. The missing ones might have left during the long migration, or something else happened in the past year. The ducks on the railings and handrails were led by the first one to rest here. Some were still vigilant, while others started to comb their feathers. Quack! The green duck standing on the handrail opposite Xiao Xian saw that Xiao Xian ignored it, so it quacked again. This time, it was louder than before, as if it was urging him. Xiao Xian looked away from the other ducks. It didn't matter if they were migrating or seeking refuge. Even if the land on both sides was closer due to the earthquake, it was still a long way to go. They must be very tired. Two of the smaller ducks almost lost their grip on the handrails when they flew down. Come with me. Xiao Xian grabbed a vine rope hanging down from the watchtower and jumped down from the top floor. He slid down the vine to the ground. The people in the tribe did not have the patience to climb the spiral staircase in the middle of the watchtower. They preferred the quick and direct way. With the abilities of a totemic warrior, it was easy to do. When Xiao Xian slid down the watchtower, the leading green duck left the handrail and followed Xiao Xian. Because there were many unfamiliar scents in the tribe, the ducks were still vigilant and alert. Xiao Xian saw the person coming from the animal pen. The green duck also saw a familiar face. Although it did not fly down, it still quacked at the person. The person who took care of the duck pen was very excited. He thought to himself, it was worth the effort of feeding them. Xiao Xian walked towards the animal pen with the person who took care of the duck pen. However, these ducks were different from other animals. The animal pen was too far away, and there was no river there. The river in front of the tribe was already occupied by the crocodiles of the drumming tribe. The crocodiles would not be friendly to the ducks. Even if the crocodiles could tolerate them, the green duck would immediately run away. Xiao Xian thought for a moment. He turned around and walked towards the artificial lake instead of the animal pen. The artificial lake that was dug for the construction of the boat was still very big. For these ducks, it should be enough for them to move around. Elder, will they stay? The warrior in charge of the animals was worried. He had also heard that these green ducks had followed the flock here, but they had left the flock midway. Would they fly away again? Should they lock them up? Let's build a duck shed first. Let's see if they want to stay. Xiao Xian said. These ducks looked easy to bully, but Xiao Xian knew that they were not as weak as other wild ducks. They had bad tempers too. Locking them up might backfire. If they were not doing well, they would definitely be in a bad mood. Then they would not be able to lay eggs. Xiao Xian saw that almost half of them were female ducks. Chapter 590. Ever since the green ducks flew back to the tribe, the eyes of the people who had seen the ducks lit up. Especially Baigua, who used to pick up duck eggs happily in the tribe on the other side of the sea. Now, his eyes were glued to the green ducks in the sky. The green ducks had flown back. Did that mean he could pick up duck eggs again? Here, build a duck shed. No, build two. Maybe they'll attract other wild ducks here, Xiao Xian said to the man in charge of the animal pens. The man in charge of the animal pens nodded. Okay, let's build the duck shed like the one we had in the tribe. Although they called it a duck shed, the duck sheds back then were already built to be as good as the houses the tribesmen lived in. Yes, let's build it like the old ones. I don't know what the weather will be like this year, but it'll be better for them to get used to it, Xiao Xian said. The tribesmen had put in a lot of effort to make these ducks stay willingly. The green ducks that followed Xiao Xian here were obviously very satisfied with the artificial lake. After Xiao Xian stopped walking, the leading duck flew directly to the surface of the lake, folded its wings, and dipped its neck into the water. Then it raised its head and waved. There aren't many fish in the lake. I'll go get some food for them, the man in charge of the duck shed left happily. These green ducks also ate fish, and their diet was even more varied than other wild ducks. This could be seen from their mouths full of sharp teeth. There were fish in this artificial lake, but they were only small fish that slipped in when the river water was introduced. Now that the river had receded, these fish were still here. They had grown up, but there weren't many of them. Perhaps during the 4 years that Yanjiao wasn't here, other fish-eating birds lived nearby. When he returned, Xiao Xian even saw some bird poop and feathers by the lake. Now, they would also introduce water from the river. However, other than the piranhas, there weren't many other aquatic animals in the river. If he wanted to get some edible fish that weren't too aggressive, he would have to find other fish. Thinking of this, Xiao Xian made a mental note of this. If he went hunting in the future, he would use the net to catch some fish and see if he could get some suitable fish to raise in the lake. The people responsible for raising the ducks were all experienced. Whether they were from the other side of the sea or from the old haunt, they had already mastered many techniques. Even if it was the first time for many people to come in contact with these ducks, after interacting with their companions, they could quickly learn how to raise the ducks. The duck feed was made according to the same recipe as before. The person in charge of raising the ducks had even made some improvements. Even though many of the ingredients were no longer the same, the group of green ducks would still eat them. Perhaps they were tired and hungry from the long journey. More than 50 green ducks gathered around the trough and began to eat. At first, the other ducks were hesitant, but when they saw that their father was leading the way, they followed suit. Xiao Xian glanced at the green duck that was eating the most. Even if it had lost weight due to various reasons, once life was stable, it would definitely swell up again and return to its previous size. When the group of ducks started eating, Xiao Xian noticed that a smaller duck had a cloth tied around its leg. Looking at the stains on the cloth, it should have been there for a while. The way it was tied was also very professional and familiar. When the Taiha people suffered external injuries, after applying medicine, they would tie it with sackcloth or other things that could be tied. The knot on the smaller green duck's leg was the knot that the Taiha people usually used. Xiao Xian did not catch the duck that was fighting with its brothers and sisters for food. Instead, he waited for it to finish eating before catching it. With his experience in dealing with fat ducks, Xiao Xian could easily subdue this small duck. Xiao Xian untied the cloth on the duck's leg and looked at the part where the cloth was tied. Over there was a scar that had already healed. Now, it was almost healed. The scar had already faded, and there were many fluffy feathers growing there. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to see the scar that was about to disappear under the fine fluffy feathers. There was also some powder that was obviously different in color from the duck's feathers. That was the residue of the medicine that had been applied. Because the cloth was tied so well, the dregs of the medicine did not completely disappear. They were left behind along with the cloth. When they left the tribe on the other side of the sea, the Taiha people said that they would take good care of these ducks. From this, it seemed that the Taiha people had indeed done so. He released the duck that he had subdued. Once it was free, it ran to the fat duck's side and stared at Xiao Xian cautiously. But the fat duck looked at Xiao Xian and continued to eat. Just now, when Xiao Xian caught the duck, it turned its head to look. But that was it. After looking, it continued to eat. The other ducks had already finished, but it continued to eat. Xiao Xian left the matters here to the person in charge of rearing the ducks. Then he spoke to the people patrolling the area. Even if they wanted to continue rearing these green ducks, if they were a threat to the tribe, they would not be merciful. These green ducks were not normal wild ducks. It was always good to be cautious, especially the smaller ones. They had no impression of the Yanjiao people. After leaving the man-made lake, Xiao Xian went up the mountain and told the shaman and chief about the cloth on the duck's leg. Speaking of the Taiha tribe, Zheng Luo and Duo Kong missed them. Duo Kang's eyes turned. When should we go and get the Taiha people to come over? The Taiha people liked strange herbs. In the depths of the forest, there was a patch of green that the advance party used to go to. There were countless rare plants. If the Taiha people were here, they would definitely love it. Xiao Xian also said that if the two continents were really close to each other like the Rain tribe said, and Rock Hill City had old grievances with the slave masters on the other side of the sea, there was an 80 to 90% chance that a war would break out. Rock Hill City had made so many preparations, they weren't just there to drink tea and chat. If that happened, the people on the other side of the sea might not have a peaceful life. The Taiha people might be affected on the other side and their lives might not be as good. If they moved over, they could still be neighbors with Yanjiao. Plus, the Taiha tribe was more reliable than the other tribes. If they joined forces with the Taiha tribe, they would be able to stabilize Yanjiao. Now, all the tribes were starting to gather together. Right, there were also those gold weapons. If the Taiha people came over, they had to show them the gold weapons made by the Yanjiao people. Before the new bronze weapons were made, there was a record of which warrior's preferred weapon was written down. Then, the quota was allocated according to merit. Warriors who contributed more to the tribe would naturally get their weapons earlier. Duo Kong had a list of names in his hands. It was arranged according to their contributions. When it was their turn, Duo Kong would call them over for questioning. Then, he would let the craftsmen in charge of forging the weapons according to the type and appearance of the weapons that the soldiers were used to. When he saw the Taiha tribe again, he believed that there would be a lot of new bronze wares in the tribe. Zheng Luo and Duo Kong had the same idea. They were looking forward to the day the Taiha people saw the new bronze weapons made by Yanjiao. They wondered what their expressions would be like. Chapter 591. Because of the fat duck's arrival, Xiao Xian thought about the results of the knot divination. He finally understood where the knot was pointing. This forest was not the only place in that direction. The knot was pointing to a place even further away, on another continent. Most of the birds in the sky must have flown over from the other continent. The green duck must have migrated along with the birds. It happened to encounter Yanjiao and stopped here. Looking at it this way, it was possible that the birds were migrating due to the change in weather. In the past 2 winters, this continent had been unusually hot. If it was the complete opposite on the other side, it would have been extremely cold. Looking at it this way, the birds might have sensed a warmer place and decided to migrate to avoid the cold. Looking at the green duck swimming leisurely in the lake, it did not look like it was in trouble, nor did it look like it sensed danger. Hence, the possibility of a natural disaster was very low. After knowing this, the restlessness in the tribe calmed down for the time being. Actually, after settling down, Xiao Xian had been thinking about what the tribe should do in the future. In the past, when the river in front of the tribe was still an insurmountable moat, living here was like living in isolation from the rest of the world. They would not see any outsiders. But now, the moat was gone. Even the unknown and terrifying obstacles in the sky were gone. Cha-Cha could fly back and forth every day without meeting any obstacles. After arriving, Xiao Xian could roughly guess why Cha-Cha did not return with the other great mountain eagles from its movements and cries. Normally, great mountain eagles would only fly to Eagle Mountain when they were at a stage in their growth. For example, young eagles that had never been to Eagle Mountain after hatching but had already reached their limit. Yes, young eagles. To great mountain eagles, eagles that had never been to Eagle Mountain were all young eagles. The other type of eagle that went to Eagle Mountain was an adult eagle that had once again entered the stagnant growth stage. They had already begun to age, and if they did not go to Eagle Mountain, they would continue to age until they died. Once they successfully entered Eagle Mountain and came out, they would undergo a complete transformation and enter the next stage of growth. In theory, a giant mountain eagle was also a type of beast that could grow indefinitely. No one told them this. It was a conditioned reflex that originated from their bloodline, just like how they would eat when they were hungry and drink when they were thirsty. Once they entered that period, they would have a natural instinct that would tell them where to fly and find a solution to their problem. However, Cha-Cha was not a young eagle, nor had it entered a stagnant growth stage. It had to take a greater risk to go to Eagle Mountain, so it had to stay there longer than other eagles. Among the eagles that went to Eagle Mountain at the same time, only Cha-Cha behaved so willfully that the other eagles thought he was courting death. Therefore, when Cha-Cha finally came out of Eagle Mountain, the other eagles had already left. When Cha-Cha wanted to fly to the fearsome beast mountain forest, it realized that a disaster was coming. Whether it was underwater, on the ground, or in the sky, everything was changing. Cha-Cha did not dare to run around, so it tried to fly along the route that Xiao Xian had taken with it. Then it flew along the Yanjiao hunting area and flew to the place where Yanjiao used to live. Cha-Cha chased away the other birds and beasts that lived there, then waited for the disaster to end. That was how the rest of the story came to be. In fact, Cha-Cha would have flown there if not for the invisible barrier in the sky above the river. Even though the river was no longer there, Cha-Cha was still afraid. The scene it saw when it left with Xiao Xian in the canoe was deeply engraved in its mind. Therefore, after the disaster ended, it dawdled for a while. When it was sure that the barrier in the sky was gone and it was about to fly to the fearsome beast mountain forest, the Yanjiao team actually came. With the barrier in the sky and the river gone, there were more and more exchanges between the two sides of the river. The pontoon bridge was still there, and the tribe could not continue to live here in seclusion like before. They would have to interact with more people, and every tribe had their own strengths and characteristics that were worth learning. Back then, Yanjiao lived alone in seclusion because of natural isolation. They could not interact with outsiders, but now it was different. They could only broaden their horizons by interacting more. Moreover, they still had to gather information, especially about the desert and the other continent. Let's not talk about the distant future. Even now, the end of the year winter was getting closer and closer. People in the tribe still wanted to trade the animal skins they hunted for other things. The pontoon bridge could only bear a limited amount of weight, and it was not very stable. Later on, the river level rose and the river width increased, making the pontoon bridge less reliable. When Xiao Xian and the others came, the width of the river was only 200 or 300 meters. Now, the water level had gradually risen to 600 or 700 meters. Although it had stopped rising, once winter ended and the ice and snow in the upper reaches melted, the river level might change seasonally. Moreover, there was still the rainy season. Therefore, the tribes on both sides of the river were prepared. The Ji tribe had originally planned to rebuild their tribe, but they retreated 200 meters away from the river bank, just in case. On the Yanjiao side, there was no need to worry about their living quarters. However, they had to pay more attention to the low-lying farmlands. The tribe did not count on the pontoon bridge made of wooden rafts floating on the river. Now, Yanjiao had begun to build ships. In the future, when the expedition team went out to trade, they could learn from the longboat tribe and use a fleet. They could cross the river and go deep into the land. On the other side of the river, there were many tributaries that flowed into the river, so the fleet could go straight in. Xiao Xian had been thinking about this for the past few days. Since the tribe had decided to settle down here, and the river was no longer as intimidating as it used to be, there would definitely be more people coming and going from this river. Until now, the river in front of the tribe still didn't have a name. If the expedition team went to other places to trade, and someone asked where the Flaming Horns lived, how would they answer? Would they say, "We live on the other side of the river"? There were so many rivers, who knew which one they were talking about? Not every tribe knew about the dangerous river that used to be. However, since this river was related to Yanjiao for 1,000 years, why not name it after some words related to the Yanjiao tribe? It wasn't popular to name streams and lakes these days. Tribesmen usually used the method of demarcating their territory. If it was within their own territory, it would be their own section of the river. Or if it was completely within the territory of the drumming tribe, they would name it. They did not care about rivers that were not in their territory. Even the Longboat tribe's famous Boat River Fire legend did not name the river that their fleet often passed by. Then Yanjiao would set a precedent. The river in front of the Yanjiao tribe, the Yanjiao River. That didn't sound too good. That would make it sound like the entire river belonged to the Flaming Horn tribe. The river was so long that even if the Flaming Horn tribe wanted to expand, they couldn't really take this endless river into their territory. The Flaming River. After thinking of a few names, Xiao Xian went to the top of the mountain to discuss with the shamaness and chief. He told them his idea and made the final decision. Xiao Xian told them his idea. Zheng Luo, Ao, and the two shamanesses looked at him with eager eyes. This was a good idea. The shamaness had been thinking about how to make the Yanjiao tribe famous. But now was not the time to go on a crusade. Although many people knew about Yanjiao after the Battle of Wanshi, it was far from enough for her. As long as there was a chance, the shamaness would not reject it. Xiao Xian's suggestion was exactly what the shamaness wanted. They also wanted to name it Flaming Horn River, but they knew that it would be too much. It would cause the other tribes to be rebellious. There would definitely be more people from other tribes who would object. Then they would use their own tribes' names to name their own sections of the river. That would become a tribal dispute, and it might not last long. Then why don't we follow Xian's suggestion and call it Flaming River, said Jing Luo. The shamaness thought for a moment and nodded. The others had no objections. The name, Flaming River, was decided just like that. The name of the river had been chosen, but not everyone knew this name. Even if they knew there was a flaming river, they might not know it was here. We can put up a stone tablet, said Xiao Xian. In many places, stone tablets or other signs would be used to tell outsiders the name of the place or object. That's right. We can put up a stone tablet. We can even carve a tribal totem on it. Let people know we named the river. Duo Kong rubbed his hands together. He was itching to make a stone tablet. After the decision was made, the tribe immediately took action. Xiao Xian used the fearsome beast bones he hunted some time ago to make 10 bone tablets. He engraved the name, Flaming River, on them and added the words, erected by the Flaming Horn tribe. Beside the tablets were the Flaming Horn totemic patterns. He planned to place them near the tribe. Although they did not name it Yanjiao River, it was not that far off. It was just more subtle. Other than the section near the tribe also sent a team of warriors to the other side of the river to put up stone tablets further upstream or downstream. As a result, some tribes that lived near the river often saw people who were easily carrying large stone tablets and setting them up by the river. Flaming River. Why was it called Flaming River? Some people were confused, some were unhappy. The Flaming Horn tribesman grinned and tossed the giant stone tablet into the ground. We call it Flaming River. What, you have a problem? No problem, don't be afraid. If you have a problem, just say it. Come, let's have a good chat. Chapter 592. Although most of the tribes along the river were damaged by the natural disaster, and many of them were directly wiped out, there were still some survivors who continued to live along the river. Not every tribe had the courage to move. Even though this place had been affected by the disaster, they were still unwilling to move. That was why when the Yanjiao people carried a large stone tablet with the name, Flaming River, on it and erected it along the river, many people saw it. It was also the first time they saw someone naming a river that wasn't part of their territory. Perhaps some people would still be unhappy, but the Yanjiao people weren't afraid. If they knew who changed the name again, they would go over and have a chat. Reason? No, there was no such thing as reason here. At times like this, it all depended on strength. Only the strong had the right to speak. In this area, no one dared to fight the Yinjiao directly. Knowing that the name of the flaming river had started to spread around the river, the two shamans' faces became even more wrinkled. They smiled all day and even became addicted to naming things. They thought about naming the man-made lake, the mountains in the tribe, the boats. Because of the name debate, the two shamans started arguing again. However, the others didn't care about naming things. The people from the other side of the sea still had the habit of stocking up at the end of the year to trade. After arriving here, they stocked up on hides. Other than their daily necessities, they wanted to let the expedition team trade them. Even though there wasn't the royal city or any other cities here, many tribes had their own unique skills. Others couldn't learn them even if they wanted to. It depended on talent. They could also trade for many good things at the trading point. The boats were almost finished. With the addition of bronze wares, many stone and bone wares could be replaced by metal wares. They were close to the forest, so it was easier to get wood. They also had experience in building boats. When they were in the fearsome beast forest, the longboat tribe had given them boats. Even though the boats were destroyed by the disaster, some of the craftsmen had figured out many techniques from the boats. Even though the boats they built couldn't compare to the longboat tribe in many aspects, they had good materials, good wood, good metal wares and Xiao Xian's creative ideas. The boats they built this time were much better than the ones the tribe took when they left this place. The tunnel from the man-made lake to the flaming river was already dug. They were just waiting for the ship to be built and the gates to be opened. Beside the artificial lake, the green duck was still leisurely swimming around with its second-generation ducks. Even the noise of the boat building did not scare them away. Sometimes, they would even come closer to watch curiously. After a few days, the green duck was no longer as skinny as it was during the migration. It had gained a lot of weight, and it was not far from the size Xiao Xian was familiar with. It wasn't just the green duck. Its second-generation ducks were also much more energetic. Their rejection of the tribesmen had lessened a lot. They would even step on the ducks' feet to beg for food when they saw someone feeding them. Yes, begging for food. The second-generation ducks had inherited their father's shamelessness and shamelessness. Since the living conditions here were so good, and there were people to protect and feed them, and they had a place to stay. They did not have to suffer from the cold or the rain, and there were no natural enemies to threaten them, they decided to stay here with their father. 3 days ago, when they saw a flock of birds passing by, they only raised their heads to take a look and didn't seem to want to fly away. Xiao Xian carried a huge tree to the lake. It was brought back by the people who went out to look for trees. He helped to carry it. How is it? How many more days do we need? Xiao Xian looked at the completed boat and asked the craftsman there. We'll be done in 2 days. We'll test the completed boat in the river tomorrow, said one of the craftsmen. After knowing the progress of the boat building, Xiao Xian did not want to delay them any longer. He put down the tree and prepared to leave. When he reached the river, he saw the people who took care of the duck shed coming over to feed the ducks. The ducks that were originally lined up to watch the craftsman build the boat flapped their wings and rushed over. Some of them even started fighting. Ever since the tribe started feeding the ducks had become lazier. Now, other than when they were fighting for food, they rarely flew. He wondered if they would still be able to fly when they became as fat as balls. Xiao Xian went over to ask about the ducks. They're doing well. They're easier to raise than when we were in the other tribe. I just have to take care of the one in the lead. The other green ducks will follow it. The person who was feeding the ducks smiled. It's just a pity that we haven't seen any eggs yet. It's still too early to see any eggs. Xiao Xian went to the field to take a look. When he came back, the ducks had finished eating. The fat duck swayed from side to side as it walked, but it looked lazy and lazy. Seeing Xiao Xian walk over, the fat duck only glanced at Xiao Xian, then decided to find a place to squat. Xiao Xian went over to check the food trough. There was still some food left. According to the person who made the food, it was some crushed herbs. The ducks could eat it, but they didn't like it. The herbs were useful for the ducks. In the past, sick ducks would eat the herbs themselves, so the person who took care of the duck shed added them in. In the first few days, the ducks didn't care whether they liked it or not. They ate everything. Now, they gradually learned to be picky. They ate what they liked first, then came back to eat the rest when they were hungry. If they weren't hungry, they wouldn't eat. Xiao Xian looked at the fat duck that was looking for a place to rest. Tisk, look at how spoiled you are. Why don't you go to the sky? But just as Xiao Xian finished speaking, the fat duck really flew up. It wasn't just the fat duck. The other second-generation ducks also took off. Whether they were swimming in the lake or hiding in the grass, they all flapped their wings and took off. Xiao Xian. Did they really go to the sky? Were they planning to leave? But soon, Xiao Xian knew that the ducks weren't leaving. After they flew high, they rested on the trees and looked at the sky. The sky. What was there? Xiao Xian looked over. Soon, he heard the whistle from the guard in the tower. There's something in the sky. Xiao Xian looked around and found a tall tree to climb. In the sky, a flock of black figures flew over. It's a flock of birds. They weren't that surprised to see flocks of birds anymore. But this time, it was different. When the flock of birds flew past the tribe, the green ducks and their second-generation ducks followed. Just as Xiao Xian thought that they were going to escape, the fat duck stopped and quacked loudly in the direction of the flock of birds. In an instant, other than the cries of the flock of birds in the distance, the only sounds in the sky were the strange cries of the green ducks. Xiao Xian's eyes widened. He saw some birds leave the flock and fly over. Wild ducks, fuck. These fat ducks were really good at attracting wild ducks. Chapter 593. Every time a flock of birds passed by the tribe, Xiao Xian would observe them. Even if he could not see what the birds looked like, he could roughly guess the types of birds in the flock. He could estimate their size, speed and so on. At the start, the flock of birds were all large birds with many fearsome beasts. They were fast and had great stamina. Later on, they were more ordinary birds. The green duck was one of the last flocks. Perhaps it was special. If it was alone, it would not have landed in the flock of birds. It should have flown in the flock of birds in front. However, it had a family and a group of second-generation ducks. It was delayed for a long time. In the end, it could only wait. The flock of birds behind the green ducks was even more ordinary. The ones that left the flock because of the fat duck's call were the more ordinary wild ducks that Xiao Xian saw in the forest on the other side of the sea. These wild ducks had different feathers and habits, but they looked very similar. Xiao Xian classified them all as wild ducks. Back when he was at the tribe on the other side of the sea, the green duck attracted many wild ducks into the tribe. Now, the same thing happened again. However, this time, it was not just the fat duck. It brought its second-generation ducks with it. The wild ducks that flew over attracted the attention of many people who were busy working in the tribe. Those who had experienced the flock of ducks were very happy. With more ducks, there would be more duck eggs. The guards did not stop the wild ducks from coming closer. Hence, when the wild ducks left the flock, they followed the green ducks and landed on the artificial lake. The originally calm surface of the lake became much livelier. The wild ducks that landed took up almost a third of the lake. Moreover, the changes were still happening. The wild ducks were still landing. The flock of birds that flew past the edge of the tribe had not completely flown over. There were still many wild ducks in the area. However, without the green ducks' calls, they did not know what was happening here. I really underestimated them. Xiao Xian looked at the fat green duck on the lake and shouted, "Hey, duck!" The fat duck was leading the flock of ducks in the artificial lake. It slowly turned its neck and looked in Xiao Xian's direction. "You! Don't go up to the sky again." The fat duck turned its head and continued swimming forward, unsure if it understood. However, Xiao Xian noticed that the green duck had stopped flying. He let out a sigh of relief. Although the man-made lake had been expanded a little after they came back, it still couldn't handle the flock of green ducks that could attract wild ducks. The people taking care of the duck shed happily went to expand the duck shed. They were not worried that there would be too many ducks. Other than the green ducks, the wild ducks were not picky about their food. Duck food was easy to get and they did not have much of a burden. They had experience. 2 days later, the 5 newly built ships were tested on the lake. There were 50 to 100 people on each ship. There were about 300 people who left the tribe to trade, and the quota had already been decided. 5 boats painted with Yanjiao totems sailed out of the waterway between the lake and the river. Whoosh, the sails were raised. The flaming horn totem was drawn on the sails too. This was a good opportunity to make their presence known. The totem patterns on the sails were drawn by the 2 shamans themselves. When the wind blew, the sails curved in an arc, making the totem patterns on the 2 horns burn like flames. "We should be able to set sail now. Looks like there's no problem." Zheng Luo looked at the 5 boats that had sailed into the river. This time, the leader of the expedition was Ta. Duo Kong wanted to have some fun, but the expedition team didn't need 2 team leaders. He could only wait until the next time. After all, this wasn't the only time they would go on a trade trip. The people of the drumming tribe, who had already rebuilt their tribe, also saw the 5 boats with the flaming horn totem on the river. Their eyes were filled with envy. However, although they wanted Yanjiao boats, they did not feel the need to build their own. If they wanted to travel by water, they could just ride the crocodiles. The main reason why the drumming tribesmen were envious was because of the trade trip. If it weren't for the disaster, they would have many leftover water moonstones. They could even negotiate with Yanjiao to take them to further places to trade. Many of the drumming tribesmen had never traveled far before. The furthest most of the drumming tribesmen had ever been was the Pu tribe. In the past, they did not like to interact with unfamiliar tribes, but now their views were changing. Seeing Yanjiao travel, many of them naturally had the same idea. "Next year, when we get more water moonstones, we can pay off our debts. Maybe we can go with the Yanjiao team," said a drumming tribesman. "I've decided not to go to the Pu tribe to trade tomorrow. I'll save more water moonstones. In the future, if there's a chance to go with the Flaming Horn tribe's ship, we can go to further places to see. The Flaming Horn tribe is better than the Pu tribe," another warrior said. Not only them, the other drumming tribesmen also had similar thoughts. Many of them secretly made up their minds and prayed that the tribe would be able to harvest more water moonstones next year. Otherwise, if the production of water moonstones decreased, they would have nothing left to live on when the debt was repaid. They would have nothing left to live on. During the trial voyage, Xiao Xian rowed the boat along the flaming river for a while. He went to the Rain tribe to check on their rebuilding progress. The drumming tribe was rebuilding on their original foundation, but the Rain tribe was starting from scratch. It was more troublesome and required more work. Like many tribes with primitive fire seeds, the first thing the Rain tribe built was a fire pit. Then they built houses for the important people in the tribe. After that, they built houses for the rest of the tribe. When Xiao Xian arrived, the Rain tribe had already finished building their houses. They were reclaiming farmland and building animal pens. They didn't have anything yet. They mainly relied on hunting for food. Occasionally, some animals would fly or swim over from the forest on the other side of the flaming river. Other than hunting, they also harvested. They had seeds, but they couldn't plant them this year. Xiao Xian saw that the Rain tribesmen had already started using some newly made pottery. Some houses even had pottery spinning wheels and other tools in front of them. They had already picked up their skills and started a new way to make a living. According to the Rain tribesmen, there were other tribes nearby. Some of them moved away because they felt that this place was too dangerous. The forest on the other side of the river was also a dangerous place. They were afraid of living so close to it, so they left. Of course, most of the survivors chose to stay. They didn't want to take the risk of moving. Generally speaking, there were many tribes along the river. After all, this was a large water source. Even if they didn't live by the river, they weren't far from it. "Looks like there are more tribes here than I thought," said Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian actually had another idea. Not long ago, when they were talking about the trading trip before winter, someone mentioned that the trading location was too far away. Indeed, if they wanted to trade for good stuff, they had to travel further. For example, the trading area near the big tribes in the central region with more amazing skills or other large trading areas were indeed very far from here. If only they were closer, it would save them a lot of time and effort. It was definitely impossible to move the trading area here, but what if they built a new trading area here? The Flaming River was no longer a dangerous river. It would nourish many tribes around the river bank. What would happen if they built a new trading point nearby? Chapter 594. The purpose of this voyage was not just for trading. Xiao Xian also thought that if his navigation skills were good enough, he could go upstream or downstream to take a look. Back then, the natural conditions were too restrictive, so he was not familiar with many places upstream or downstream. As for the new trading point, indeed, there was no large trading area nearby. This was considered a remote area of the mainland, especially when the Flaming River was still a dangerous river. The other tribes on the mainland didn't want to come here. As time passed, there were fewer and fewer new faces here. Only small tribes like the Drumming tribe and the Poo tribe interacted with each other. If they wanted to trade, they would go to each other's tribe instead of going to a place where they could trade freely. Hence, there were fewer choices. The Drumming tribe had been cheated by the Poo tribe many times. They knew they were cheated, but they didn't have much choice. There weren't many people in their tribe. Every year, there were many people who wanted their water moon stones. The warriors didn't dare to go too far in case something happened. The Poo tribe, which was close by, was their only choice. Perhaps the Luo tribe used to be a trading partner, but now the Luo tribe was gone. From Yanjiao's point of view, not having a good trading partner was indeed a problem. Back when they were on the other side of the sea, the expedition team would bring the hides they had hoarded to the cities controlled by the slave masters to trade. There were many people there, and every city was a very good place to trade. With more choices, the hides could be sold at a higher price and exchanged for more satisfactory things. But now, in this remote area, after some thought, Xiao Xian went to the shamaness and chief for a discussion. It would have been better if Xiao Xian didn't mention it. Once he did, the shamaness and the two chiefs couldn't sit still anymore. When they were in the fearsome beast forest, they knew that many large tribes had trading points near them. They didn't think of setting one up back then. Plus, the Lu tribe often came here, so they didn't think much of it. Now that Yanjiao had moved here, the environment was different. If they wanted to trade for better things, they had to go on a long journey. The distance from here to the nearest trading point was much longer than the distance from the fearsome beast forest to the nearest trading point. If they didn't do anything, they would have to go on a long journey every time they wanted to trade. Xian's idea is not bad. The shaman lowered his eyes and pondered. But, how do we set up the trading area? Where should we build it? Ao asked. It's definitely not on our side, Xiao Xian said after some thought. I'll go over to the other side of the Flaming River and take a look. If there was a suitable place, he could try to develop it. It would definitely not develop to the level of the central region or the well-known large-scale trading zones on the grassland. But one step at a time, it would eventually succeed. Without further delay, Xiao Xian didn't go out with the expedition team this time, so he had time to observe the surrounding environment and terrain. Speaking of which, when the tribe migrated here, he only focused on this area and did not go to other places. He wanted to take this opportunity to see what kind of changes had happened to the area along the river during the disaster. Xiao Xian called over Cha-Cha, who flew everywhere every day. Riding on the eagle, Xiao Xian ordered it to fly to the other side of the flaming river. There were many forests in this area. 1,000 years ago, before the earth split open and the river formed, the two sides of the river were connected. The Yanjiao side was filled with forests, so the other side of the river must be the same. This place was equivalent to another fearsome beast mountain forest, but it was too far from the center of the continent, and it was dangerous. Many of the tribes that lived here were small and medium-sized tribes. They were unable to fight for a place to settle down in more fertile areas, and could only survive in this remote area. Actually, the soil here wasn't bad, but because it was close to the river was more dangerous. Before the river was formed, the forests were connected and the danger was greater. In their ancestors' notes, there were comments about this place. Some people said that this was a place where beasts lived and it wasn't suitable for humans. The small and medium-sized tribes didn't have strong fighting abilities, so they could only live here with their limbs tucked away. 1,000 years ago, the earth had split open, and the dangerous mountains and forests had been carved out. However, the people on this continent still didn't change their view of this place. They never thought that this place was suitable for living, so even after 1,000 years, there were still not many tribes living here. Xiao Xian looked down at the mountains below. The mountains here weren't tall, and the forests weren't dense. Perhaps because there were people living here, there weren't any thick ancient trees. The disaster had swallowed much of the river here. It was slightly different from what Xiao Xian remembered. After looking at many places, Xiao Xian wasn't satisfied, so he ordered Cha-Cha to fly along one of the rivers. This river wasn't far from the drumming tribe. In the past, this river flowed from the central region of the mainland to the river. It was still the same now. Yanjiao's ships would enter this river from the flaming river and then sail inland. Looking carefully at the ground below, Xiao Xian suddenly said, "Let's go down and take a look." Cha-Cha responded and flew down. When Cha-Cha slowed down and approached the ground, Xiao Xian jumped down from the eagle's back and landed in a small forest. The reason why Xiao Xian chose this place was because the terrain and environment here were very similar to a place he had seen before. That year, when Xiao Xian brought Cha-Cha across the river to this place, they followed the Pu tribe's expedition team to the central region of the mainland. Along the way, they rested at a place where wanderers, slave masters and slaves lived. That was where Xiao Xian saw Shu. At that time, Yan Shua's family was still wanderers. That place was where the rivers intersected. Often, expedition teams who lived in remote areas would pass by on wooden rafts. And now, the place Xiao Xian was standing on was very similar to that place. This place shouldn't be the territory of any tribe. Xiao Xian let Cha-Cha fly him around in the air again to confirm that this place didn't belong to any tribe. Although there were traces of human activity here, there weren't many traces left after a long time. Very few people came here. Xiao Xian made a mark on the map, marking it as 1, and then went to other places to look for a suitable location. For 3 days, Xiao Xian searched outside. The place couldn't be too far from Yanjiao. Therefore, in 3 days, he had already searched all the suitable places. There were 4 places that he was satisfied with, but in the end, he still chose the place marked with 1. Once he decided, the Yanjiao people began to move. Therefore, some of the people from other tribes who went out to look for food saw the Yanjiao people carrying large stone tablets to put up the tablets. Only this time, it wasn't a name, but a marking of the land. The engraved stone tablet marked out the land and told the people who came and went, "From today onwards, this land belongs to Yanjiao." "What, you don't agree? This place doesn't belong to any tribe. It's completely ownerless land. Why can't I take it? Who said that the territories must be connected? We like to mark two pieces of land that aren't connected. Do you have any objections? Don't worry, just say it. Come, let's have a good talk." Chapter 595. The place Xiao Xian had his eyes on was also at the intersection of two rivers. This would be a good place for boats to travel. When Xiao Xian was drawing the layout, he even drew out the location of the dock on his animal skin scroll. Those who didn't go on missions, didn't have shifts, and didn't go hunting were sent to Xiao Xian's plot of land to begin construction. In the minds of the tribesmen, the first task of enclosing a piece of land was to enclose the land that belonged to them and let outsiders know that this land belonged to them. That was why over the past few days, they saw Yanjiao warriors using thick and tough rattan ropes to tie a pile of rocks of different sizes onto their shoulders or backs. They were transporting the rocks to the newly encircled land. The rocks were all dug from the nearby mountains. The surrounding mountains weren't big, but they were still quite common. They still didn't belong to any tribe, but from time to time, they could see a few vigilant outsiders hiding in the bushes, watching the Yanjiao tribesmen coming and going. These outsiders didn't dare to attack the Yanjiao tribesmen. Anyone who saw someone who could carry so many rocks and still joke around would be wary. Plus, they saw more than one or two Yanjiao tribesmen every time, so they had to be extra careful. There were bound to be curious people. These tribesmen who lived in unknown corners might not be conspicuous, but they definitely had their own abilities and ways of living. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to survive. Xiao Xian wouldn't ignore or underestimate these tribesmen. After finding out that some tribesmen were secretly watching them, Xiao Xian ordered his men to prepare some wooden signs. Then, he used a plant pigment to write on the wooden signs. The words written on the wooden signs told the tribesmen who came out to hunt three things. First, Yanjiao wanted this land. Second, Yanjiao planned to build a trading point here. It would be called the Flaming River Trading Point. The trading point would open once before winter officially arrived. Any tribesman who wanted to trade could come and take a look. Third, Yanjiao had a large amount of high-quality animal hides, from wild beasts and fearsome beasts. After thinking for a while, Xiao Xian added, "It's a fair trade, and I don't cheat anyone." After he finished writing, Xiao Xian handed the wooden plaque to the soldier carrying the stones. "Find a place to insert it on the road." The soldiers carrying the stones looked at him and understood what Xiao Xian meant. Without saying anything, they picked up the wooden planks and quickly left. They still had to carry the stones. The Yanjiao people were strong and efficient in transporting stones. Xiao Xian had only circled the area for 2 days, but half of the outer wall was already built. Xiao Xian had said that the area could be opened before winter. He wasn't talking nonsense, he had calculated the time. Xiao Xian also sent people to the Drumming tribe, Rain tribe, Pu tribe and other tribes along the Flaming River. He told them about the Flaming River trading point. The Rain tribe had already started preparing for the trade. They had been saving up and were planning to trade with Yanjiao before winter. Now that they knew about the Flaming River trading point, they were even more excited. What the Yanjiao people liked, the Rain tribe might not like. If they only traded with the Yanjiao people, they might not be able to get what they needed. Now that the Flaming River trading point had appeared, they might have more choices. Naturally, they were all working hard. Some of the free craftsmen in the tribe also came over to help after they finished building the boats. Old Ko also came over. He couldn't move around, but he was good at crafting stone and wood. He could help with the construction of the houses. If Caesar was here, he would carry Old Ko and cross the Flaming River with the other warriors. They would return after they were done. If Caesar went hunting, Cha-Cha would bring old Ku over. They didn't even need to take the boat. The Yinjiao craftsmen didn't rest after they finished building the boats. They took the initiative to ask for help. They loved to create. Plus, the Flaming River trading point was a good thing for Yinjiao, so they were happy to be busy. The expedition team had already left. Before they left, Xiao Xian had already confirmed the location of the Flaming River trading point. That was why before the team left, he told the expedition team that if they went to the inland trading point, they should tell the people there that the best beast hide was in the Flaming River trading point. Was that wrong? No, it was definitely right. The Yinjiao people dared to say this out loud. We have the best beast hide. It was the truth. At the same time, Xiao Xian also told the expedition team to tell the expedition team that beast hides were more expensive in the winter. If they wanted to use the same thing to exchange for more beast hides, they should come to the Flaming River trading point during the other seasons. In the past 2 winters, the weather was abnormal, so there was no need for beast hides. However, now that the disaster was over, the weather would return to normal. Perhaps there would be other changes, but it definitely wouldn't repeat the past 2 years. In many places on the mainland, it would definitely snow in winter. It might even be colder. Otherwise, migrating birds wouldn't just fly here and not somewhere else. This year, the demand for beast hides would definitely skyrocket. The disaster in the past had caused many tribes to suffer heavy losses. They might not be able to get enough beast hides to keep warm. Even if they did, how could beast hides compare to fearsome beast hides? Some people used beast fur, feathers, straw and other things as fillers. They used linen to make simple jackets, but when it came to keeping warm, it definitely wasn't as convenient and sturdy as beast hides, especially fearsome beast hides. Many people liked them very much. The beast hides brought by the expedition team would definitely be sold out, but as for whether the people there would come to the Flaming River trading point to exchange for beast hides, that wasn't certain. Xiao Xian didn't plan to let everyone know about the Flaming River trading point immediately. This wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time. It would take a long time. Perhaps bringing out the new bronze wares would attract more attention, but at this stage, it wasn't wise to bring them out. Yinjiao's own supply couldn't meet the demand, so how could they bring them out to trade? However, the appearance of this trading point would definitely attract more tribesmen from both upstream and downstream of the Flaming River. That way, Xiao Xian wouldn't have to travel by boat to get more information about the Flaming River. Only with people could there be communication, and only with communication could information flow. Yinjiao was just providing a place for people to communicate. Of course, there would definitely be people with bad intentions who would come and try to rob or steal. Towards these people, Yinjiao only had one attitude: kill. Even a friendly tribe wouldn't show mercy to people who tried to steal or rob them. Xiao Xian compared the drawings on the beast hide scroll and explained in detail to the craftsmen. After making sure that they understood, he went to the next location. The team transporting the stones had already left the trading point with the wooden boards that Xiao Xian had written for them. They were heading towards the mountain. They walked through the forest. After 2 days of transporting stones, they had already carved out a small path. The trees on the path had all been cut down, and the obstacles on the path had been removed. The grass on the ground had already been trampled into mud. Let's stick it here. Lang Jie stuck the wooden board into the ground beside the path. He quickly scanned the forest not far away and left with the others. Not long after they left, a few figures approached carefully. They had messy hair and dirty faces, and only had some messily woven vines draped over them. They took 2 steps forward and stopped to listen. After confirming that there was no one else around, they continued to approach. When they reached the wooden board, the leader frowned as he looked at the words on the board. His expression was bitter, as if it was difficult for him to decipher the words. Although there was indeed a common language on this continent, not every tribe had a high literacy rate. The leader finally managed to decipher the words on the board, and then he explained it to the people behind him. The few of them gathered in a circle and discussed. Another person stood on the outside and carefully observed their surroundings. When the discussion was over, the leader walked to the wooden plank, clenched his teeth, and pulled it up with all his might. After pulling it out, the few of them ran away as if there was a fearsome beast chasing after them. When Lang Jie came back with the stone, he saw that there was only a hole where he had stuck the wooden board. Chapter 596. The people carrying the wooden signs quickly shuttled through the forest. They were like agile monkeys in the forest. When they moved, they could only hear the rustling of leaves or the swaying of branches. Other than that, there was no other sound. Their feet were tied with some coarse vines, and their toes were exposed. Compared to other tribes, their toes were twice as long, and their soles were larger. When they shuttled through the forest, they used their feet in addition to their hands. Their toes were flexible and powerful, just like another pair of hands. Their fingers hooked onto a branch, and their bodies swung up. In the next step, their other foot had already hooked onto the branch in front of them, and they moved forward again. They lived in a tribe nearby. This group of people came out to hunt. If they saw wild animals, they would kill them. If they found edible fruit or other food, they would bring it back. When the Flaming Horn tribe started building the trading point on the first day, they had already noticed the movement. However, they knew that their tribe's fighting power was not strong enough. In this place, they couldn't even defeat the Drumming tribe and the Pu tribe. At best, they could only compare with the already destroyed Luo tribe. They only knew about the Yanjiao people because their chief told them. When the Yanjiao people appeared and left by boat, many of their tribe's warriors saw them. When tribesmen recognized other tribes, they basically looked at their totems. That was why when they saw the stone tablet with the Flaming Horn's totem on it, they knew who was here. Because they didn't dare to go closer, they couldn't figure out what the Yanjiao people wanted to do. After 2 days of observation, they went to take a look again today. They saw a Yanjiao person put a wooden board there, and there were words written on it. Curious, they went over to take a look. Not many of them were literate, and none of them could read all the words. Because they didn't need to know many words, they didn't care. The leader of the group was the most literate. He roughly recognized the words on the board, and was shocked by the news. In their minds, tribes should revolve around the fire seed. Regardless of whether it was a large tribe or a small one, they all revolved around the fire seed. The only difference was the size of their territory. However, the Yanjiao people had actually circled out another piece of land outside of their dwelling. Were they planning something big? What was the purpose of the Flaming River trading point? If they couldn't figure it out, they immediately went back to ask the chief and the shaman. However, they didn't know how to write so many words, and they didn't have an extraordinary memory, so they just pulled out the wooden planks and brought them back. They didn't realize that they would anger the Yanjiao people if they took away the wooden planks. No one had ever done that before. Carrying the planks, they climbed over several hills and then went down a narrow path between 2 hills that seemed to be joined together. From afar, they couldn't see that there was a mountain path. After walking through the mountain path and entering the interior, the first thing that came into view was a small basin surrounded by mountains. There were many trees in the basin, and many of the trees were tied together with vines or branches to form small huts. Above the huts, there were also branches and thick leaves, or withered leaves that were tied together with twigs and grass ropes, which could shelter them from the wind and rain. Most of the things outside were made of wood and stone. The stone and bone tools were crude and rough, and most of them were hunting tools. There were even some strange shapes. Even if outsiders saw them, they wouldn't know what they were for. Unlike the former, the wooden tools were much more exquisite. Most of their living tools were made of wood. Bamboo baskets, rattan armor, rattan shields, and so on were woven very well. The residents who were busy inside were confused when they saw the people rushing back to the tribe. Didn't these people go out to look for food? Why did they bring back a wooden plate? Were they planning to chop it up and use it as firewood? The people carrying the wooden planks ignored the curious gazes and rushed straight to the chief. They placed the wooden planks in front of the chief, who was weaving rattan baskets in front of his house. Clap. The sound of the wooden planks hitting the ground startled the person weaving the rattan baskets. He accidentally used too much force and broke the rattan baskets. The leader raised his eyebrows, which was a sign that he was about to get angry. The warrior who carried the wooden planks back scratched his ears and cheeks anxiously. He didn't know how to explain, so he just kept pointing at the wooden planks on the ground. The chief was so angry that smoke almost came out of his head. When he looked down at the wooden planks on the ground, his eyes flashed. He couldn't care less about getting angry. He kicked the rattan baskets aside and carefully placed the wooden planks in front of him to read the words on it. As a chief, he was definitely not illiterate like the others. He could easily recognize all the words on the wooden planks and deduced a lot of information from the words on it. Seeing that there were still people standing beside him, the chief waved his hand and signaled for them to leave. He sat there alone and looked at the wooden planks in deep thought. In the end, he seemed to have made a decision and brought the wooden planks to the shamaness to discuss it. At the same time, at the Poo tribe's place, they were also discussing the Flaming River trading point. When they heard that the Yinjiao people were going to build a trading point here, the Poo tribesman's first reaction was, "Damn, someone's trying to steal our business." At that time, some people were clamoring to go fight with the Yinjiao people and teach them a lesson. However, when they understood the strength of the Yinjiao people, they gave up. They could see the situation clearly. If it was just a small tribe that they could control, they would definitely go and argue with them. However, when faced with a big tribe that was stronger than them, many of the Poo tribesmen were terrified. However, as famous merchants in this area, after the Poo tribesmen saw the situation clearly, they began to think about how to get more benefits from this. In the past disaster, the Poo tribe's losses were relatively small. This was something they were still rejoicing about. After the disaster ended, the Poo tribe's chief proudly praised the foresight of the Poo tribe's ancestors. They had chosen a good land, unlike the Luo tribe and other tribes that had been destroyed in the past disaster, disappearing from the world. However, after feeling glad and proud, they began to worry again. In the past disaster, a few tribes that were in contact with them were wiped out. Even if they were not wiped out and survived the disaster, their strength was severely damaged and they no longer participated in many missions. For example, when the Poo tribe went on a few expeditions every year, those tribes refused to participate in them. Those tribes already had few people. If more people went out, who would protect them? That was why the Poo tribe did not go on any expeditions. They had many things that they wanted to trade outside, but they did not have enough manpower, so they could only stay in their tribe and think of a way. Now that Yinjiao had built the Flaming River trading point, it was a good opportunity for them. Therefore, after complaining, the Poo tribe began to prepare to trade at the Flaming River trading point before winter. Chapter 597. Many tribes didn't pay much attention to the Yinjiao naming of the Flaming River. After the excitement died down, they forgot about it. Wasn't it just a river? So what if it had a name? But now, this river was connected to the trading point. Perhaps many people didn't know which river the Flaming River referred to, but the Flaming River trading point touched their nerves. That was a trading point. A place where they could trade goods. Xiao Xian had already spread the news and placed many wooden signs around the area. He believed that news of the Flaming River trading point would reach the ears of many other tribes. How is it? It's almost done, right? Duo Kong brought a group of people over. They were here to deliver food and also to replace the people who had been working here for the whole day. It's almost done. If it's not perfect, it's barely usable. Xiao Xian rolled up the animal skin scroll in his hand and looked at the surrounding buildings. The outer wall was made of stones. It was thick enough and between 7 to 10 meters high. There were 3 entrances and exits. 2 were near the dock, and 1 was facing the direction of the forest. There was already a walkway there. After Duo Kong assigned tasks to his subordinates, he ran over to Xiao Xian and said, "Oh right, this trading point will be open before winter. How do you plan to treat the people who come over? For example, the Rain tribe and the Pu tribe. I've already arranged for their places." Xiao Xian passed the animal skin scroll in his hand to Duo Kong and pointed to 2 areas marked on it. "Here, that area is towards the Pu tribe. They will definitely come over from the water. The Rain tribe will be over here." Xiao Xian pointed out the areas to Duo Kong and explained the reason for this arrangement. Wait. Duo Kong didn't have any objections to this arrangement, but he thought of a problem. "You're not going to collect anything from them?" At first, Duo Kong thought that Xiao Xian would treat them like how the slave masters treated their cities. On the other side of the sea, tribesmen who wanted to enter the city had to pay an entrance fee. After entering the city, they would choose a place to trade and collect goods based on the quality of the goods. However, Duo Kong and the others used to trade in the free trade zone in the city. They didn't have a fixed location and would always look for empty spaces, unlike others who had a fixed location to set up their stalls. However, Duo Kong wasn't willing to let others set up a stall in his own territory. Xiao Xian explained, "This is only the first step. In the beginning, no one knows what this place is like. We have to let them understand the benefits of this place first. Free access is only temporary. Once everyone is familiar with this place and knows the benefits of this place, we will collect some things appropriately." "I see." Duo Kong immediately understood and nodded. "That's true. If the tribesmen couldn't see the benefits, they wouldn't make decisions at will. Therefore, if they wanted to attract those people, they had to offer some benefits first. If they started to collect tolls before they had even developed, many tribes would probably shrink their necks back when they heard about it. I wonder how many tribes will come when the time comes." Duo Kong muttered as he left. Xiao Xian didn't know either. He knew that only the Rain tribe, the Drumming tribe, and the Pu tribe would be coming. These few days, some people came to inquire, but Xiao Xian didn't know what those people had decided. He could only wait until the day the trading zone opened up. Xiao Xian looked at the animal skin scroll in his hand again. There were houses drawn on it. Some were connected into large areas, some even had small courtyards and warehouses. Some were smaller, but most of the houses were made of wood. It wasn't difficult to build them, which was why they could be built so quickly. This was a place where tribes traded with each other. Basically, there wouldn't be any transactions between a tribe and a single person or a few people. These activities were all organized by the tribes. Therefore, in this trading zone, there weren't any small houses for a single person or a few people. If there were many people, Xiao Xian would give them a bigger place. If there were fewer people, Xiao Xian would give them a smaller place. The most central area belonged to the Yinjiao people. Moreover, it was different from the other wooden houses. The central area was a stone house with more than 2 floors. It was getting closer and closer to the opening of the trading zone. The Yinjiao headquarters had already transported some goods over. In addition to the goods brought by the expedition team, the tribesmen still had a lot of things in their hands. Many of them were relatively cheap. There were also some animal skins, which they had accumulated over the past few days. Pottery, horns, and bones weren't rare. The main things they had were animal skins and meat. Yinjiao didn't lack food now. They could use the extra food to exchange for other things. In fact, now that the trading zone was open, the Yinjiao people would benefit greatly. They would have more choices. Many of the nearby tribes had suffered varying degrees of damage in the past disaster. They didn't recover as quickly as Yanjiao. Perhaps they would take out the things they had saved to exchange for other things they urgently needed. Soon, the Rain tribe also brought their goods over. They couldn't repay their debts for the time being, but they could use some of their labor to exchange for food for the winter. They hadn't been here for long, so they didn't have much in stock. This was just a trial. Many people from the drumming tribe also came, but they mainly came to watch the fun. They didn't have any goods, so they could only temporarily maintain the most basic livelihood. Even if they were envious, they could only watch. However, during this period of time when they were rebuilding their tribe, they dug up some scattered water moonstones. Some of them were even taken out from the water by the crocodiles. They planned to exchange them for some food. The Pu tribe first sent people over to investigate. They felt that it should be safe for the time being, so they went back to report. Not long after, the Pu tribe's team also came over. Because there weren't many people coming over, Xiao Xian arranged for them to be closer to the center instead of scattered everywhere. Among the people from the Pu tribe, there were some people Xiao Xian knew. The leader was still someone Xiao Xian was familiar with. It was the Pu tribe's expedition team's leader, Fan Ning. There were also people like you, whose eyelids were painted in bright colors. A whistle interrupted Xiao Xian and Yu's reminiscing. Xiao Xian let people lead the Pu tribe's team to the arranged place, while Xiao Xian looked towards the entrance. After a while, outside the wall, a head appeared at the entrance of the trading point. That person's head was tied with a small braid in the shape of a chicken's claw. On both sides of the braid, there were also beast horns. The habit of wearing beast horns was not only practiced by the Yanjiao tribe, but also by other tribes. The other party seemed very cautious. Under the urging of the guards at the entrance, they slowly appeared. It was a group of people wearing rattan armor. Their hairstyles were similar. They held some wooden or stone weapons in their hands and carried rattan baskets on their backs. What caught Xiao Xian's attention was their feet, which were much bigger than the others, and the long toes on their feet. With a strange expression, Lang Jie ran in front of Xiao Xian and said in a low voice, "These people were the ones who observed the trading point a while ago." Xiao Xian also had an impression of a few of them. However, he remembered that the figures he saw hiding in the forest were people with unkempt hair. Now it seemed that these people had specially dressed up before coming. Chapter 598. The guards at the entrance felt their teeth ache when they saw the procession dilly-dallying. In fact, before these people had even turned the mountain, the guards outside the trading point had already discovered them. It was the eagle's cry in the sky that told them. They were still thinking, the Rain tribe, the Drumming tribe, and the Pu tribe had all come over, so which tribe was it now? Cha-Cha, who was in charge of keeping watch in the sky, told the guards that there weren't many people coming. Hence, the guards thought they were probably from one of the smaller tribes in the Flaming River region. They were looking forward to it. They waited for almost half an hour but they still didn't see anyone. After an hour, the people from the Pu tribe had already gone in but those people still didn't show up. As one of the guards at the Yanjiao trading point, Kun Tu thought to himself, could it be that this tribe's totem is a tortoise? When they finally saw those people, the guards finally understood why they were so slow. They were too cautious. It was as if they could scare them away with just a flick. They couldn't wait to take a step forward and stop to look around after 3 steps. There were almost 80 people. Other than the leader, everyone else was dressed the same way. When those people finally got close, Kun Tu blew his wooden whistle to tell Xiao Xian that more tribes were coming. Those people stood at the entrance but didn't go in. They were still very wary of the armed Yanjiao guards at the entrance. Go in, they won't eat you. Don't worry, it's safe to trade in the Flaming River trading point. We Yanjiao are here, Kun Tu said. The leader sized up Kun Tu as if he was thinking about how trustworthy Kun Tu's words were. After a while, he nodded and lifted his neck. Just when Kun Tu thought he would walk into the trading point with his head held high, the man acted like a thief and stuck his head out to look inside the trading point. He dawdled for a while before taking small steps in. His gaze quickly scanned the trading point and his face was filled with nervousness. It was as if he would run away at the slightest sign of trouble. Xiao Xian looked at this strange tribesman and asked loudly, "May I ask which tribe you are from?" Xiao Xian tried his best to speak softly and in a more friendly tone, but the person who came in still shrank back as if he was frightened. The leader probably realized that he was behaving inappropriately and felt embarrassed. He forced himself to calm down and cleared his throat. "Ahem. We are from the drumming tribe. I am the chief, Abuli." "The drumming tribe? Abuli? Or the leader? Was there ever such a cowardly leader?" No matter what they thought, Xiao Xian saw that although they were overly cautious and curious, they didn't seem to have any intention of snatching the treasures. He walked over with a smile and said, "Xiao Xian, elder of the Yanjiao tribe." "Elder?" Those who had just straightened their backs felt lacking in confidence again. "Ahem, oh." Abuli did not know what to say. His expression was a little awkward, and the smile he forced out was very stiff. He could not force out a word for a long time. These people probably did not interact much with other tribes. Perhaps, this was their first time participating in such a transaction. Xiao Xian thought to himself. "May I know what the drumming tribe brought this time, and what do they want to exchange?" Xiao Xian took the initiative to ask. Lang Jie, who was following behind Xiao Xian, glanced at the people from the drumming tribe a few times, especially the few people in the group. He had seen them a few times when they were moving the stones. Even if they changed their heads and wore rattan armor, he could still recognize them. It was just like when he was hunting a group of beasts, he could tell which one was the prey he had set his eyes on. However, what could these people have in their hands? Looking at the people from the drumming tribe, they looked a little like the Yanjiao people who were cut off from the rest of the world a long time ago. But back then, even if the Yanjiao people had nothing, at least they had beast hides. These people lived here, so they definitely did not have any better beast hides. So what could they bring out to exchange? Lang Jie wasn't looking down on the people of the drumming tribe, he was just curious about what they had in their hands. The rattan baskets they were carrying were woven so tightly that he couldn't even see a gap. The top of the baskets was also tightly covered. Lang Jie could only hear the slight sound of hard objects colliding and rubbing against each other in the rattan baskets when the man accidentally stumbled just now. Lang Jie couldn't hear anything else because the man was walking too fast. Lang Jie didn't know how his strange big feet moved. Lang Jie thought that he would fall down, but in the next moment, he stood up steadily and continued walking. Sure enough, even if they were a small tribe, they could not be underestimated. As for Xiao Xian's question, Abuli did not directly answer. His eyes were still quickly scanning the surroundings, as if he was trying to identify the dangers around them. "We want to exchange for some food. Oh, and some beast hides. I want something thicker and sturdier." Abuli said this quickly and hurriedly, unlike his usual slow movements. After he finished speaking, he continued to scan the surroundings. "We have both food and beast hides in Yanjiao. However, do you want to trade directly with us in Yanjiao, or do you want to go elsewhere? There are people from the Rain tribe, the Drumming tribe, and the Pu tribe here." "Not the Pu tribe." Abuli quickly rejected. He did not know where the Rain tribe came from, but he knew the Drumming tribe and the Pu tribe. The Drumming tribe looked too fierce, so they did not dare to talk to them. As for the Pu tribe, they had bad morals and were too treacherous. They did not like them. "We'll trade with you in Yanjiao. Your wooden board says it's a fair trade." "It's not a lie." Abuli opened his eyes wide. It was rare that he did not look around. He only looked at Xiao Xian, wanting to get a definite answer from Xiao Xian. Yes, that's right. Xiao Xian nodded. After getting a definite answer, Abuli let out a long sigh of relief. His cautiousness and vigilance eased, but it did not disappear. Xiao Xian brought them to the center of the trading point. There were many empty houses along the way. There were not many people in the trading point, so there were many empty houses. However, when the drumming tribesmen looked around, their eyes were filled with envy. They were even more envious of the beast hides that the Yanjiao people wore. As for the tools in the Yanjiao people's hands, they were only curious. They did not pay much attention to them because they did not know what they were. Besides, what they wanted the most right now was food and beast hides to keep them warm. This year's winter would be slightly colder, so they had to be prepared. Although the trading point was still very simple and there were not many people, to the drumming tribesmen, a new door had already opened. The young warriors of the drumming tribe kept looking at the beast hides and meat on display. When they saw the cubs, they couldn't help but want to take a good look and touch them. Lang Jie looked at the warriors of the drumming tribe who kept swallowing their saliva. What made him satisfied was that although these people really wanted to take those things, they didn't have any intention of snatching them. Instead, they just followed Abuli, who was in the lead. The drumming tribesmen wanted beast hides and meat, so Xiao Xian mainly brought them to the area where the hides and meat were displayed. The more he looked, the more nervous Abuli became. Yanjiao's beast hides were far better than he had imagined. He did not know how much they could exchange for. Would they be able to reach his expectations? After showing them around, Xiao Xian brought them to a spacious warehouse. There, 80 drumming tribesmen could enter. You've already seen the beast hides and meat. They should be enough to satisfy you. Now, let's see if you can bring out something that will move our Yanjiao. Chapter 599. Abuli's face was tense as he replied with a grunt. Then, he removed the rattan basket from his back. Xiao Xian could tell that Abuli wasn't trying to pull a long face. He was probably too nervous, and his movements were stiff as he removed the rattan basket. Behind Abuli, there were more than 10 Ji tribe warriors carrying heavy rattan baskets. They also removed the rattan baskets from their backs, but they didn't seem to have any intention of opening the rattan baskets. They just hugged the rattan baskets with nervous expressions. In comparison, Abuli was the calmest of them all. The surrounding Yanjiao warriors also looked at Abuli's rattan basket. They wanted to see what this strange Ji tribe had brought. If it wasn't something that Yanjiao needed, would they still trade with these people? The rattan baskets were tied too tightly. When the lid was opened, the rattan basket let out a creaking sound. It was very clear in the quiet warehouse. When Abuli opened the lid, Xiao Xian caught a glimpse of light. The reflection of the light made his heart skip a beat. These are the things we brought. Abuli placed the rattan basket on the table in front of him and pushed it towards Xiao Xian. The muscles on his arms seemed to be frozen. His movements were not smooth at all. His two eyes stared straight at Xiao Xian. He wanted to know what he wanted to know from Xiao Xian. Did the Yanjiao people want the things they brought? If the Yanjiao people didn't want them, should they just carry them back? Or should they do something else? Sensing Abuli in the dozens of pairs of eyes behind him, Xiao Xian calmly moved the rattan basket over and looked inside. Sure enough. Inside Abuli's rattan basket, there were some white transparent hard objects. Every one of them had distinct edges and grew into a cluster. There were only a few scattered crystal pillars that looked like they had been broken by an external force. Xiao Xian took out the broken piece. It was a white, transparent crystal. The bottom part of the crystal was white, while the other part was colorless and transparent. Crystal. Xiao Xian looked at the crystal in his hand, which was almost as thick as his forearm. Although he had seen crystals in some trading places before, they were not necessary for most tribesmen. They were not like the jade produced by the Mang tribe, which had an effect on the totemic power in the body. They were also not like the water-moon stones of the drumming tribe, which could illuminate the body. They were not as valuable as the shells that could be used as currency for medicinal purposes. Therefore, even if people bought these crystals back, they would only make them into ornaments. And those who could buy these crystals were people who didn't have to worry about food and clothing. Many tribes who were short of daily necessities wouldn't trade for these crystals at all. But now, the crystals that the drumming tribe took out were not only big, but they were also in clusters. The crystal in his hand was as thick as a forearm and as long as a palm, but it was only a small one among the clusters. Seeing that Xiao Xian was only a little surprised at the beginning, the drumming tribesman became even more nervous. Xiao Xian handed the crystal in his hand to Lang Jie next to him. For the Yanjiao people, this kind of thing could only be used as an ornament. There was no need to trade. Only the people from the other side of the sea would look at Xiao Xian from time to time, as if they wanted to say something, but because of the rules, they didn't say anything. Lang Jie weighed the crystal in his hand, then took out a short stone dagger and slashed at the crystal abruptly. Zing! Stone powder splashed out from the point of impact. The drumming tribesmen were so scared by Lang Ga's sudden movement that they all took a step back at the same time. Looking at the small gap in the crystal, then at the gap in the knife in his hand, Lang Jie said, "Medium to high-quality stone." After testing the stone, Lang Jie put the stone on the table expressionlessly. Aside from the stone's special appearance, there was nothing else that surprised him. What was the use of just looking good? Wouldn't a polished stone tool be more or less the same for hunting? It was fine to trade for something to play with, but Lang Jie wasn't willing to use this to trade for more things from the Yanjiao. Their tribe had plenty of stone tools. Now that many people were using metal tools, what was the use of these? And for the Yanjiao people, the best ornaments weren't beautiful stones, but fierce beasts' horns, sharp teeth, claws, and so on. Those were the best ornaments to show off one's strength. There was a thing called aesthetic differences in this world. Next to Lang Jie, a warrior from the other side of the sea held back for a long time. When Lang Jie finished speaking, he finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Just as he was about to speak up, Xiao Xian made a gesture and he immediately stopped talking. He stood quietly behind, trying to keep a straight face. He wasn't as anxious as before. "You brought all these?" Xiao Xian asked. Abuli nodded. "Yes, all these." The drumming warriors behind Abuli realized that these might not be valuable after seeing the Yanjiao people's calm reaction. They were very discouraged and didn't even try to hide their disappointment. Abuli was already mentally prepared. He had secretly gone out to trade with the Pu tribe before, but he didn't get much. This time, although he had high hopes for Yanjiao, he was also prepared for the worst. He even thought that he wouldn't be able to trade for anything and would bring these back untouched. The most stressful moment was over, and now Abuli was more at ease. He carried the rattan basket over and looked at the large cluster of crystals inside. "These are called crystals. They have a special meaning in our tribe. They are bright and sturdy, and are loved by our drumming tribe. In the drumming tribe, these crystals would be made into jewelry and worn on the chest. They could also be made into weapons." This was a custom passed down from the ancestors of the drumming tribe. However, these weapons and jewelry made from crystals would rarely be placed outside. Even if they wore them, they would hide them under their clothes. Weapons were the same. Most of the time, they would carry wooden weapons on their hands, but they would hide the weapons made from crystals on their bodies. The drumming tribe believed that important things should be hidden and not seen by others. Even if they were trash in the eyes of others, as long as they valued it, they would hide it well. That was why Lang Jie had never seen any crystal jewelry or weapons on them when he saw them before. That was because they were all hidden in places that weren't easy to see. After Abuli calmed down, his tone gradually calmed down and his body relaxed. This is all we have. I know that it can't be exchanged for much, but this is already the best that our tribe can offer. He could tell that the flaming horns did not lack stone tools. However, his reputation was no longer important. He had to face it calmly. What he wanted to know now was what they could exchange these stone tools for with the flaming horns. Would the flaming horns be willing to trade with them? Xiao Xian listened quietly and nodded. He pointed at the crystal on the table. We can trade. This crystal can be exchanged for a piece of beast meat. You should have seen the size of the beast meat when you were outside. Huh? Abuli was stunned. Not only Abuli, but even the warriors of the drumming tribe behind Abuli widened their eyes as if they were frozen in place. It was as if they had heard something unbelievable. One stone, for a piece of beast meat. Abuli swallowed his saliva. That's right. That big? Abuli raised his hand and gestured according to what he saw outside. It was about 2 palms long and 1 palm wide. Yes. Aha. Abuli jumped up from his chair. This was completely out of Abuli's expectations. He originally thought that a basket of crystals could only be exchanged for 2 or 3 pieces of beast meat. After all, the crystals he brought over were all bunched up together. They were too small and couldn't be used to make weapons. The drumming tribe warriors behind Abuli were no longer timid. They couldn't wait to run out. We can trade. We can really trade for meat. I want to eat the meat of that pointy-eared beast. I saw it hanging outside just now. That doesn't look good. I want to eat the ones with long horns. Those won't do. What's wrong with your eyes? Just pick the fat ones. The warrior hugging the rattan basket felt like he was hugging a basket of meat. He was laughing so hard that his eyes couldn't be seen. He jumped up and down as if he wanted to fly. Meat, a basket of meat. Abuli now felt that the Yanjiao people were really pleasing to the eye. They were much better than the people of the Pu tribe. Back then, he was cheated badly by the people of the Pu tribe. Just thinking about it made his heart ache. Right, speaking of which, we've never seen those beasts hanging outside, Abuli said. He actually wanted to find out the names of those beasts. Even if he didn't know how to hunt, he could still brag about it. He was the most knowledgeable chief in the tribe. Of course. The fearsome beasts all live in the forest near the flaming river. They couldn't come here in the past, so the chances of them coming here in the future are slim, Xiao Xian said. Plop. There was a series of collapsing sounds behind them. Lang Jie was confused. The ground was so flat after being beaten by them. How did these people fall down? Abuli, who hurriedly got up, didn't care about Lang Jie and the others' puzzled gazes. He moved closer to Xiao Xian and stuttered, fearsome beasts. The beast meat you're talking about, fearsome beast meat? Abuli's voice was trembling as he spoke. He only heard 2 words from Xiao Xian. Yes, Xiao Xian said. Oh. Abuli nodded expressionlessly. His face was red, and he suddenly jumped up. When he landed, he quickly stomped on the ground 3 times with his big feet, causing a cloud of dust to rise. It wasn't just Abuli. The other drumming tribesmen did the same thing. The Yanjiao people in the warehouse looked at the drumming tribesmen strangely. They didn't understand what they were doing. A declaration of war? It didn't seem like it. They didn't know that the drumming tribesmen would only express themselves like this when they were extremely excited. Chapter 600. Beast meat and beast hides were exchanged according to the amount of crystals the drumming tribe brought. Some of the beast meat was recently slaughtered because fearsome beast meat could be kept fresh for a longer time. Plus, the temperature wasn't too high, so the meat could be stored for a longer time. When it was placed in the trading point, there was no strange smell. Some of the meat was taken from the cave on top of the mountain where the Flaming Horn tribe stored their food. When they were chopped, the meat was hard and firm. Other than that, there was also cured meat and jerky, but those were more expensive because of the salt involved. The people of the drumming tribe mainly chose fresh meat. When they were choosing the meat, there were disputes in their group. Some wanted this kind of meat, some wanted that kind of meat. The reason was that they thought the meat they chose looked delicious. Most of the drumming tribe members had never eaten fearsome beast meat before. Even the chief, Abuli, had never eaten it before. This was also why they didn't think of fearsome beasts at first. Up until now, they had never seen a fearsome beast, let alone eaten one. So when they heard that they could exchange for fearsome beast meat, they were all shocked. After the shock, they became excited. They were so excited that they started arguing. Xiao Xian ordered his men to cut some of the meat for them to try. Although it was raw, to tribesmen, it wasn't like they didn't eat raw meat before. The drumming tribesmen tasted the raw meat without any pressure. Of course, only Abuli tasted it. The final decision was made by him, the chief. After Abuli looked through the items, he did not immediately trade them outside. Instead, he returned to the warehouse and told Xiao Xian about the items he had his eyes on. Then, he asked Xiao Xian to move the items into the warehouse and not leave them outside. Xiao Xian could understand. The drumming tribe members were very careful. There were people from the drumming tribe, Rain tribe and Pu tribe walking around outside. The drumming tribe members were worried that people would see what they got. After the beast meat and beast hides were exchanged, Abuli wrapped the beast meat with the leaves he gave them and placed it in the rattan basket. The beast hides were carefully rolled up and placed properly. After the rattan basket was covered, he tied it tightly with a straw rope to ensure that the rattan basket wouldn't open when they ran. "Can we trade here in the future?" Abuli asked expectantly after packing up. "Of course you can. The trading point isn't complete yet. This is just a trial run. It will last until winter when it snows. However, after winter ends, it will definitely be open again next year. You can come over whenever you want to trade." Xiao Xian paused for a moment before continuing, "As for the crystals you took out, it would be great if you had a bigger one. That way, we could exchange them for more things." Abuli didn't say anything. His long toes dug into the ground as if he was thinking about something. When the warriors of the Ji tribe behind him heard that the bigger the crystal, the more things they could exchange for, their eyes lit up. Without any delay, the people of the Ji tribe left as soon as they finished their trade. When they arrived, they practically walked in small steps. When the Yanjiao warriors saw them, they couldn't help but feel anxious for them and wanted to give them a push. However, after exchanging their goods, the people of the Ji tribe ran away as if there was wind beneath their feet. When they were in the trading point, they could only be considered to have walked a little faster. After all, within the trading point, Yanjiao had guaranteed that there would be no robberies. As soon as they left the trading point, a group of 80 people disappeared in the blink of an eye. Kuan Tu and the others who were guarding the entrance of the trading point were dumbfounded. It's good that they ran fast. It's safer. Xiao Xian smiled as he watched the figures flash by in the distant forest. Because of the Yanjiao people inside the trading point, there wouldn't be any robberies. However, in the forest outside the trading point, there were some people with ulterior motives. They didn't have anything to trade in the trading point, so they wanted to rob the people who had exchanged their goods. However, the people of the Ji tribe weren't good at other things, but they were very good at escaping. The Yanjiao people couldn't help but sigh. Growing such big feet wasn't useless. Not only were those people fast, but they were also very agile in the woods. They were up and down, and their figures were erratic. Their existence was reasonable. No matter how small a tribe was, they still had their reasons for surviving. The people hiding in the forest who wanted to rob them could only watch as the people of the Ji tribe ran further and further away with their rattan baskets on their backs. After exchanging their goods, Abuli's group was so excited that they wanted to fly. They ran even faster. Hooking on branches with their toes, they even flipped a few times in the air as they flew past a bush of thorny plants. They weren't worried at all about falling and smashing into the thorny plants. In the past, the Ji tribe rarely interacted with other tribes. Most of the time, they hid in the forest and lived their own lives. They were very wary of other people. Only by being careful could they live a long life. When he saw the Yinjiao wooden board with the words written on it, Abuli hesitated. However, in the end, he decided to give it a try. He didn't expect to succeed. At that time, there were many people in the tribe who objected. They said that it was definitely the Yinjiao people's scheme. Humph. When they returned and saw the things in the rattan baskets, who would object again? The more Abuli thought about it, the more proud he became. He felt that he was wise and powerful. No wonder he was the chief of the tribe. When the group finally returned to the tribe, they saw that at the entrance of the tribe, there were many people waiting with their necks stretched out. They were anxiously waiting. The first Ji tribe warrior who noticed Abuli's group shouted. Soon, a large group of people rushed out from the gap. They had been waiting for Abuli's news. The chief had brought dozens of people out for a trade. This was a big event in the tribe. Everyone wanted to know the result. How was it? The shaman of the Ji tribe held a purple crystal staff and walked out quickly. Abuli raised his chin and put on airs. There's no rush. Let's talk inside. The shaman of the Ji tribe knew Abuli well. When he saw this, he knew that they had succeeded. However, when he entered the tribe, he realized that this trade was much more successful than they had expected. Some of the Ji tribe warriors who went out for the trade couldn't hold back their saliva anymore and started to talk about what they had seen and heard. After all, they were the first batch of people to go out for a trade. How could they not show off? Not to mention, this time, they had indeed opened a new door. Abuli didn't care about the beast meat. Instead, he took out the beast skin he had exchanged for and put it on. He turned around in front of everyone. How was it? Beast skin. Fearsome beast skin. You've never seen this before, right? Someone went over and touched the beast skin from top to bottom, then from bottom to top, but Abuli slapped him away with his stick. You can really exchange for it. Those who didn't go with him regretted it. They thought that this trip would be dangerous and wouldn't yield any results. Who would have thought? The onlookers hesitated for a while. Then, they thought of something and ran back to their homes. Every family in the Ji tribe had a lot of crystals. However, most of the crystals they had were about the same size as the ones Abuli brought out. Some were even smaller. After Abuli showed off, he waited for the crowd to disperse and came to a cave. Inside, he hid the treasures of the Ji tribe's chiefs for generations. Not only were there bigger crystal pillars and clusters, some of them were even glowing. Chapter 601. Not long after the drumming tribe left, a few other smaller tribes arrived. In the past, these smaller tribes didn't have much of a presence. Even if Xiao Xian sat on the eagle's back and searched everywhere, he might not be able to find all of them. Now, news of the trading point had probably spread. Some people couldn't help but come over out of curiosity, while others came to trade after hearing about it from others. For example, a small tribe that Xiao Xian had never heard of sent almost 50 people carrying baskets of fruit. They got the news from the drumming tribe. Just like the drumming tribe, they were also a small tribe with low combat power. That was why they had been living in seclusion all year round. They wished they could hide in the dark all day long. They felt safer that way. Now, probably because of the disaster, they had suffered some losses and were having a hard time. They also heard from the drumming tribe that they had obtained some benefits at the trading point, so they mustered up the courage to come over. Then, they obtained some food and animal skins from the Flaming River trading point. Although it wasn't much, it was enough to satisfy them. Firstly, they didn't have the crystals that the drumming tribe stored, and secondly, they didn't bring many fruits either. However, looking at the Yanjiao people, they seemed to like the things they brought. They wouldn't have to eat fruits this winter. There were animal skins too. Although most of them were just animal skins, it was enough to make them excited. This trip was worth it. Yes, the Yanjiao people were very satisfied with the fruits they brought. These fruits were high-quality food, comparable to fearsome beast meat. They didn't know where the tribesmen gathered these fruits. Even in the depths of the forest, the Yanjiao warriors had never seen these fruits before. They wouldn't tell anyone about this secret. The Yanjiao people didn't hesitate either. After all, it was just fruits. Without these, they could find other fruits in the forest. The reason why they were willing to trade was because the children in the Yanjiao tribe preferred these fruits. Compared to the ferocious beast meat, the energy brought by these fruits was milder. Even the children who had not awakened their totemic power could eat them, and some of them could be given to the children in the tribe as snacks. As the name of the Flaming River trading point spread, Xiao Xian's initial goal was achieved. Not only did the Yanjiao people get many things they were satisfied with, but the people who came here also left with smiles on their faces. After winter ended, when the Flaming River trading point opened again, they would come again. The drumming tribesmen didn't have any goods on hand. They came here to buy soy sauce, so they could only look and not trade. The people of the Rain tribe threw out the things in their hands and exchanged them for the things they needed to survive the winter. Other than the Yanjiao people, the happiest people were probably the people of the Pu tribe. The drumming tribe did not have many water moonstones, but the Pu tribe did. After trading with the drumming tribe for so long, plus they hadn't gone on a long journey for a long time, the Pu tribe had stockpiled a lot of water moonstones. Unlike the drumming tribe, who suffered a severe disaster, the Pu tribe's stock was basically intact. The people of the Pu tribe, especially the people from the Pu tribe's expedition team, used their stock to trade for a lot of beast hides and meat from the Yanjiao. They bought them back to make jerky, then froze them. When winter ended and they went on a long journey, they would sell them. It had to be said that the people of the Pu tribe were indeed shrewd merchants. They could see the huge business opportunity in just one trip here. Yanjiao's beast hides were better than any they had seen before. They could stock up and sell them at a higher price when they went on a long journey. Because fearsome beasts were rare on the mainland, their meat and skin, and even some horns and bones could be sold for a high price. This way, they could trade for more goods, and when the time came, they could come back and see if they could scam someone. However, even though they were satisfied, they were still confused. Why did the Yanjiao people think of claiming their territory here? Why didn't they put their fire seed here too? The tribesmen's thinking was still stuck on the idea that they had to leave their fire seed here. Only with a fire seed could they determine their territory. However, in the Flaming River trading point, they didn't feel a trace of Yanjiao's fire seed. That was why the people who came here didn't feel any rejection from the fire seed of another tribe. This was also why they were satisfied. In the past, if they wanted to trade on a large scale, they would go to the Pu tribe the most. Not to mention how stingy the people of the Pu tribe were, just the Pu tribe's fire seed made people feel uncomfortable. That was why many people didn't go there again after the first time. The Flaming River trading point actually didn't have a fire seed. This was what surprised every tribesman who came here. When they returned to their own tribes, they would talk about it after dinner. However, in the end, some people who thought they were smart concluded that Yanjiao didn't use a fire seed to make the Flaming River trading point more attractive. A place without a fire seed would make people feel more at ease and more popular. At the same time, they were also surprised by Yanjiao's courage. Not only did they enclose their territory, they even allowed outsiders to enter their territory. This was definitely not allowed in many tribes. Even some of the famous trading points in the central region were either built on the borders of the bigger tribes or they didn't belong to any tribe. Yanjiao's way of doing things was unique and made people click their tongues in amazement. Letting outsiders enter their territory without a fire seed? Weren't they worried about something happening? Actually, if Xiao Xian said he wanted to build a trading point in Yanjiao's current territory, there would be many people who would object. After all, they wouldn't be able to change their mindset in such a short period of time. It wasn't easy to break a 1,000-year-old tradition. How could they let outsiders enter their territory as they pleased? However, it was different if they encroached on a piece of land outside their territory. It was also their territory, but the meaning was different. They could do whatever they wanted. On this day, the temperature had begun to drop significantly day by day. This was the precursor to winter. Many of the leaves in the forest were no longer green. The withered leaves on the ground were blown up by the wind, rustling from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain. It was almost winter, and the trading point was about to close. The drumming tribe, who could only watch helplessly, had already left. The Rain tribe and Pu tribe had also stopped and went back yesterday. Xiao Xian was polishing a transparent, shiny object in his hands when he heard someone report that the drumming tribe had sent someone over again. Xiao Xian raised his eyebrows, but he wasn't surprised. He knew that the drumming tribe would definitely come over before winter. Abuli's reaction at that time told him that this would be the case. Xiao Xian put the polished transparent, shiny object into a soft animal skin bag. Then, he got up and left. The last time Abuli came to look for Xiao Xian, and this time, he also said that he wanted to look for Xiao Xian. Since he already knew Xiao Xian, Abuli didn't want to talk to anyone else. He was worried that he would be cheated if he changed people. This time, Abuli didn't come with a rattan basket. Instead, he came with the others, carrying something as thick as a person. This time, he only brought this one thing. They didn't have the strength of the Yanjiao people, so they had to carry it together. This way, they could maintain their speed. Even so, they had to change groups of people to take turns carrying it, or else they wouldn't have been able to hold on. When Xiao Xian walked into the warehouse, Abuli was panting heavily. However, his hand was tightly pressed against the pillar that was as tall as a person. When he saw Xiao Xian, Abuli immediately stood up. However, he didn't leave the pillar. Instead, he said, "You said that a bigger crystal can be exchanged for more things." "That's right." Xiao Xian nodded. Abuli took a deep breath and untied the leaves and rattan ropes that wrapped around the pillar, revealing the hexagonal crystal inside. Duo Kong, who had rushed over after receiving the news, saw the crystal pillar. His jaw almost dropped. He rubbed his hands and walked over. Come, tell me what you want. I'll bring you over. The new batch of fearsome beasts we hunted are not bad. They even have tusks. Do you want them? Abuli was nervous. He didn't know Duo Kong, so he was on guard. Don't worry, this is our tribe's hunting team leader, Duo Kong. Most of the fearsome beast meat and fur you chose last time were hunted by him, Xiao Xian explained. Yes, tell me what kind of fearsome beast you want, I know it all. Let's go, I'll bring you over. Duo Kong smiled warmly. After hearing Xiao Xian's explanation, Abuli let down his guard. When he heard that those were hunted by Duo Kong and knew a lot about fearsome beasts, Abuli was tempted. He wanted to know more about fearsome beasts so that he could go back and brag. At the same time, he wanted to see what other good stuff Yanjiao had. Xiao Xian didn't lie to them. The huge crystal pillar that Abuli brought was exchanged for a lot of things. The same size crystal pillar could be exchanged for twice as much as the smaller ones. When Abuli left, Xiao Xian even gave them a bird's egg. The baby birds that he brought back had already grown up and were laying eggs. Abuli left with a smile on his face. At the same time, he asked Xiao Xian softly if he could exchange for something bigger than that one. After getting a positive answer, Abuli smiled so widely that his eyes disappeared. No matter how many things he stored, if he didn't use them, it would just be a waste of space. After Abuli and the others left, Duo Kong touched the crystal pillar with a smile. Indeed, on this side, this crystal pillar couldn't be exchanged for much. In the eyes of many people, this was just a special stone. However, Duo Kong knew that on the other side of the sea, the slave masters with holes in their brains and weird aesthetics loved these shiny things. Since the two continents were so close, who knew when they would be able to make a trip over? They should keep these things as backup. Maybe one day, they could use these to exchange for more resources from the slave masters' cities. However, at this stage, the most important thing wasn't to cheat the slave masters of their money. Other than Xiao Xian keeping a portion of these crystals for himself, the rest were all sent to the cave where the core seed was placed. Xiao Xian wanted to know what these crystals would become under the influence of the core seed. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.